Okay.
That's my baby girl right there. Ooh, she with her friends. I'm a dog, I ain't shit. I'ma wind up in her friends. Bad guy, outlaw. Ooh, I'm like Pac, but I ain't die after the second time I got shot.
What's good, everybody? I'm here with TFM, everyone's favorite MGTOW in the whole entire manosphere. I'm honored again to be here with TFM, and I think that's my
the fuck is going on?
That's my alarm for my child, so she can do her homework in the background. Hang on, but yeah,
Christ. I thought I was unprofessional.
Hey, I'm not the most professional person in the world. I try. Where's that alarm at? Good Lord. But yeah, we're going to talk about community and stuff like that.
Right.
Once I look for this bag.
Why don't you just go take care of your business? I'll
right.
wait. You clearly got more important things to do.
That's done. And I just send her a text message letting her know that her project is done because she got a project that we were timing for science project, basically.
Okay.
Just let her know that it's done because she's been egging to take it out of the refrigerator. But yeah, sorry about that again, y'all. Basically, today's topic is going to be about no-go zones and community unity and things along the lines of that. How to build one, how to put one together. You know, what's the benefits?
That hard.
I mean, what's the benefits and stuff like that? Because I know a lot of people are asking me, well, ask them about that and how to put one together and this, that, and the other. Because I know y'all were talking about the Hasidic Jews and y'all were talking about this. You were talking about your family, Tico, the last time. Ask them about this. So this is basically where this whole entire topic basically came up because a lot of people asked me to ask you about it and your professional opinion on how to, form one. And we'll talk about other things if it ends up being short.
Well, what's interesting is because of the election and the fraud and basically I don't know or care what your politics are. Here's the thing. Here are the facts. There's a lot of evidence. What you might say, oh no, it's all bullshit. The fucking CNN told me so. That's fine. There are thousands of depositions. There's video. There's insider. There's whistleblowers. Not a single judge will hear the evidence. They find a way to throw it out on a technicality. You have states that have been ordered to turn over their voting machines for a forensic audit, and they're basically dragging their feet, filing motions to basically postpone the order. There's no reason, like if there was nothing going on, there'd be no reason to do this whatsoever. If this election was totally on the up and up, why wouldn't you hear the case? Why not expose, Sidney Powell and Giuliani and Trump for the complete retarded chills that they are, the conspiracy theory, Alex Jones nuts they are? Why not embarrass them in a courtroom? But no, they won't. They just keep throwing them out on technicalities for standing or saying you waited too long or whatever. And now you have essentially now the clock is running out. The election was in late November. The inauguration is in mid-January, and everyone's just dragging their feet because once Biden is sworn in, then it doesn't matter. It's like with the Hunter Biden thing. Before the election, there was this, that's a Russian disinformation op. There's nothing to see here, blah, 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 nothing to see here. Then after the election, like, oh yeah, Hunter Biden, he's a fucking crackhead pedophile. Total, like he's under investigation for being a communist spy. But you didn't hear that before the election. In fact, Barr, the guy who just got fired from the FBI, he sat on that laptop for a year and said that he would not publicly disclosed that Hunter Biden was actively being investigated because he didn't want it to affect the election. So you had crackhead pedophiles who were the corrupt son of the Democratic candidate for president, and the media and the FBI, they were all covering it up. And then when thousands of people allege voter fraud and have, whistleblowers, sworn affidavits, video evidence in some cases, no judge will hear the evidence. No judge will actually judge on the merits of the case. They just throw it on a technicality. And so people on the right, like, this isn't just, oh, we lost the election. Oh, boo-hoo. Like, this isn't just, this is how the government is completely rigging the election to give it to Biden. And you look, again, if you disagree with that, if you think this is all bullshit because CNN told you so, why won't a judge hear the case and embarrass Giuliani and Powell publicly, and so we could all have a jolly laugh and point our fingers at them about how stupid they are? Why is the FBI and the media telling one story about Hunter Biden before the election and then flipping the script and admitting there's a problem after the election now that it's too late? Now, what's going to happen like in late January, early February? Like, oh, wow, these Dominion voting machines sure were bad. Man, there was so much fraud. It's like, well, you said like a couple months ago there was no evidence of fraud. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you don't think that'll happen? You just saw it happen with Hunter Biden. Literally after the election, everyone just changed their mind. The reason why I bring all this up, again, I don't care what anyone's particular politics are. If you think Biden won and whatever, that's your opinion. But people on the right see what's going on, and they like, not people like me, people on the mainstream right are talking about no-go zones. They're saying that mostly having to do with the new wave of lockdowns coming down the pipe, where Democratic governors are saying that, all the businesses need to be shut down. Even this is what pisses me off. Let's say you're a small business. Let's say you're a restaurant, and you were told to operate at half capacity, keep everyone socially distant, and you spent tens of thousands of dollars putting up like plastic separators in your business. And everyone's wearing a mask, you're obeying the law, you're barely making ends meet, and they're like, oh, guys, shut it down again. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, nothing. Where's the evidence that this is going to affect anything positively? There's no proof. In fact, if you remember early on in the pandemic, they were saying that the WHO was the authority. We must not contradict what the WHO is saying. Then when the WHO said, hey, lockdowns don't work, like, fuck the WHO.
They sure enough did. The
CDC is where we get our information from. The CDC is like, yeah, the mortality rate is less than 1%. Fuck the CDC. Fauci says it's really bad. So it's like, essentially the left is just doing whatever the fuck they want. They're pushing this Great Reset, which the Great Reset is just, remember the global warming Green New Deal? That thing that the left has been pushing for 10 years?
Yeah.
That's all the Great Reset is. It's that same thing repackaged again. So they're like, hey, we need to take over the economy and abolish private property. Otherwise, we're all going to die and the polar ice caps are going to melt. And everyone's like, no, I don't believe you. And they tried that. And they even put a retarded child up. And like, look at the retarded child. The retarded child says you have to give up your private property. Like, how dare you? I should be in school. And
Yeah.
And people are like, you know what? I know she's very retarded and I can appreciate that, but I don't want to give up my private property. So no dice. And like, fuck, what do we do now? And like, oh, well, there's this disease from China that has a less than 1% mortality rate. And is basically on par with H1N1. And they're like, let's go with that. Let's push complete lockdown and shutdown of the economy, and let's destroy people's businesses, and then we can nationalize everything. And that's what they're pushing. And we admitted, I think in the summer, we admitted we overreacted. We admitted that the lockdowns went too far, that we actually hurt more than we helped. We actually caused people to kill themselves. And these weren't like, for the sake of old people in their fucking 80s with multiple pre-existing conditions who probably had a foot in the grave anyway, for the sake of saving their lives and buying them a few more weeks in the nursing home, we were causing our productive workers, our young productive workers, into bankruptcy and suicide. Trading literally the best people, the people we need more of, for the people who had one foot in the grave already. I can't even imagine. I've never seen a pandemic. I can't even think of a pandemic where more than half the people who have the disease have no symptoms, are effectively immune to it. That's not a pandemic. That's literally nothing.
Yeah, it is.
And all these articles saying that coronavirus is forever, coronavirus is going to be here forever and ever. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Coronavirus is the common cold. People don't know this. There are 30 kinds of coronavirus. All coronavirus means it's the structure of the virus when you look at it under a microscope. A coronavirus looks like a little ball with little bulbs coming off of it, and it looks like the crest of a rooster.
Yeah.
You know how, and that's what the Spanish word for that is corona.
Yeah.
So that's where the word comes from. So there are 3 coronaviruses that affect humans. 2 of them cause the common cold. One of them causes SARS, which COVID-19 is a mutation of that strain. So this is the 3rd time we've had a SARS epidemic, but we've had coronavirus forever. It's the common fucking cold. So no shit, coronavirus is here to stay. It's the common fucking cold. And that's actually why people are asymptomatic.
Yeah.
Because
FYI, they actually have they actually have a MERS-CoV version of it also.
A MERS code? What is that?
MERS, like MERS disease, basically the Middle Eastern.
Oh, it's the same
virus.
thing. No, that's just, that wasn't.
Yeah.
So viruses are often named after where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Now that ended with H1N1 because it was originally called Mexican flu.
Yeah.
And then Obama was like, that's racist. So they called it swine flu. And the pork industry was like, don't call it swine flu. Nobody's buying our bacon. And so they called it H1N1. But up until the Obama administration, we always called diseases after where they originated from. So you had, Southeast Asia respiratory syndrome, SARS. You had the Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS. They're the same virus. The name just tells you where it originated from.
Yeah.
But they were both, COVID-19 should have been called the China flu or the Wuhan flu or whatever. But now that we live in the post-Obama, don't offend people. Oh, calling it the Mexican flu might offend the Mexicans. Oh, calling it the Chinese flu might offend the Chinese. So we got to call it whatever. It's retarded.
Yeah,
But
very retarded.
my point is they're locking down the economy again, despite now knowing that the fatality rate is less than 1%. In fact, all these deaths in air quotes caused by coronavirus, they've come at the direct expense of basically the deaths caused by almost every other very minor disease. For example, deaths caused by seasonal influenza are down like 98%. Every year, about 60,000 boomers die of the seasonal flu. Because we all going to die of something. And if you're that old, you're going to die of something. So a lot of times, these really, really old people, they get the seasonal flu, and that's what they die from. And we have a vaccine. We have flu shots that they're free in a lot of places. And yet tens of thousands of boomers
They're actually charging now for them this year.
Sure. But a lot of times they're free.
Yeah, I know.
My point is that tens of thousands of people die of the seasonal flu every year, and we don't give a shit. We don't shut down anything. Now, because of coronavirus basically only affects the very same people who are at risk of the seasonal flu. If you're young and healthy, you're not dying of the seasonal flu. In fact, most young, healthy people don't even get a flu shot because they don't give a shit. But the seasonal flu deaths are down 98% because the people who would have died of seasonal flu are dying of coronavirus instead, which means tens of thousands of the people who are being attributed to the pandemic death count would have died anyway of diseases like the seasonal flu, which we always have and always will have. And we don't lock down. We don't fucking do mask mandates. We basically just don't do shit. And we're fine. And life goes on. But we're destroying people's lives. And all in the name of communism. It sounds like a conspiracy theory, but I'm fucking dead to rights right about this. This whole Great Reset thing is just communism dressed up again. Every time communism fails, they paint it a new color. They try to sell it again. And that's all the Great Reset is. It's the global warming Green New Deal repackaged as somehow the only way to defeat a virus with a less than 1% fatality rate is to abolish private property and capitalism. And to give all of our power to fucking super governments like the EU and shit like that, and just like do whatever they say and let them rule over us. Somehow that stops viruses. Somehow, don't ask them how that works. Just give up and submit to communism. It's so fucking stupid. But anyway, the end of the story is the reason why I'm bringing this up at all is because we're talking about no-go zones. The right put up with riots for months, cities being burned down, people being arrested for defending themselves, lockdowns, because they were basically chomping at the bit to make their voice heard in November. They were going to show the left exactly what they thought about them in November. And all the, like, this was crazy. Look, I'm Biden cheated, and I look, here's the proof. Here's the proof Biden cheated. You see, there's no proof. I have fucking proof as the day is long. Here we go. Biden won a record low amount of districts. He also underperformed across all demographics. He underperformed Hillary Clinton. He underperformed Trump. He underperformed Obama and Clinton among all districts and all demographics, aside from the 5 or 6 battleground states that he won at 4 a.m. So he was underperforming both Hillary and Obama's numbers across the board, both in the number of counties he won, both also in the turnout, and also among minorities. Trump actually increased his support among minorities. So basically, Biden was losing in comparison to Hillary and Obama. And then at 4 a.m., hundreds of thousands of votes came in through, and then he just got like skyrocketed over the top all of a sudden. And of course, nobody knows what happened, and no one wants to hear about that. And it was only in these 5 or 6 states. So all the states that he clearly won or clearly lost, it's like whatever. And he underperformed both Hillary and Obama in those states. Hillary and Obama did better than Biden in the states that he clearly won or clearly lost. But these 5 or 6 states that were very close, that were being counted into the night, he got a record number of votes, the most votes in the history of anybody. He got 80 million votes, which is an earth-shattering record, but only in these battleground states at 4 a.m.
Facts.
There is no other explanation for it. Like, if he was so popular and everyone would love Joe Biden so much, which doesn't make any sense, and there's literally no proof of that. Like, look at the Biden rallies. There was no one fucking there. No one was excited for Joe Biden. As much as people hated Trump, no one was excited for Joe Biden. How did he underperform Hillary in 2016 everywhere other than the 5 or 6 counties where he got hundreds of thousands of votes at 4 a.m.? Like, if you look at before 4 a.m., everything is consistent across the country. But then at 4 a.m., he just skyrocketed, hundreds of thousands of votes coming in all at once. It's like, it's retarded. And then you have thousands of people, eyewitnesses, saying what happened, and no judge will hear it because either they're part of the problem, they're compromised, or they're just scared. They're worried that if they put their neck out and question the election, that their families are going to be targeted. They're going to be targeted. And I don't mean targeted like for re-election. I'm talking like murdered.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both. I think they're both either compromised or they're scared for their lives and family. Me personally.
Right. So you have people on the right who they waited until November to make their voice heard. They made their voice heard, and the election was blatantly stolen. And the thing is, they were caught. It'd be one thing if they stole it and it wasn't detected until months later and it was too late to do anything other than maybe try to impeach him, which honestly, if Biden was impeached, it would just make Kamala Harris president, which wouldn't really solve the problem. But they were caught like immediately, and then whistleblowers started coming forward and everything. But now you have it to where the Democrats are just running out the clock, and the judges keep tossing things out for bullshit technical reasons. Oh, you don't have standing. Oh, you waited too long. Or they basically just flat out, there's a couple of judges who just flat out said, even if everything you say is true, I'm not going to overturn the election. I refuse to overturn the election. So essentially, if you have voter fraud and if you have people ready to riot on your behalf, everyone will just let you get away with it because they don't want to risk any kind of consequences for that. Which at that point, the right is slowly realizing that there is no graceful way out of this. That, making your voice heard in November, it doesn't mean shit when you can have blatant voter fraud, and then judges are just laughing you out of the courtroom and refusing to hear. No, they're not saying the evidence is bullshit. They're just throwing it out on technicalities. They don't even want to hear the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a dark day. So that's the bad news. Here's the good news: is now everybody's starting to whisper about no-go zones. You have conservative counties or conservative towns. You have mayors or sheriffs or whoever in these like red areas saying we're not complying with those orders. We're not shutting our state down. Now, they've had it where I can't remember what place this was. There was a place where the governor said all restaurants must shut down. And the cops said, no, we're not enforcing that. So the restaurants stayed open. So the governor sent the health officials into these restaurants to basically take away their health licenses so they couldn't operate legally, and said, okay, and they even said, look, we won't shut you down for health code violations if you shut down indoor dining and just do takeout. But if you refuse to abide by, so essentially they're saying we're going to say you're violating the health code unless you do what the governor says. So even when the cops say we're not going to enforce it, they send the health officials in. But then the question then becomes, well, if they say go fuck yourself, we'll operate without a license. Eventually the cops have to come in. Like, without people with guns to enforce the law, laws are just letters to Santa Claus. So
True.
you have to have people with guns willing to enforce the law. So if the police don't enforce the law, then the laws, they don't fucking exist. It's just like, remember when Obama was president, he just stopped enforcing immigration law. He didn't repeal the law. He didn't reform the law. He just refused to enforce the law. That's all it takes. You just don't enforce the law. Now, the right is in a very interesting position, and they're starting to get it. So for the last couple days, they've been doing like these protests. And in fact, I think it was in Oregon. The right with guns stormed the state capitol with guns to arrest the governor. And the police said, no, we're not going to let you do that. And the right was like genuinely shocked because, you know, you have Antifa, Black Lives Matter, killing cops and saying like, you know, fuck the police and everything. And the right is like, we support the police, we back the blue. And so they expect, like, they foolishly thought that these cops are going to be on their side, but not understanding that the cops are just, they're there for a paycheck. I mean, yes, they swear to defend the Constitution, but that doesn't mean shit. I mean, open up a history book or look at what police and the soldiers do. They follow orders. The good ones who take their oath seriously, they just kind of refuse to follow the order, but they don't arrest anyone. They're certainly not going to let you storm the Capitol with guns and arrest the governor. So the right got pepper sprayed and went home. They didn't do anything to the cops because now today, a cop in a right-wing protest, well, the cops were basically saying, oh, you don't have the right to do this because you're not riding to help the Democrats. The cops got bear maced.
I know that's right. I did the same damn thing.
Well, I'm just saying, like, that this is a turning point. The right is learning that you cannot oppose a tyrannical government and support the police at the same time. You have to choose. If the government,
you can't be peaceful about it. You got to let them know that you're going to be very serious about it, and there's going to be repercussions and consequences for not.
Yeah, so it really comes down to you have to basically make peace with that. So if you could be like, we generally support law and order. But if the government has gone rogue, they are ignoring the Constitution, they're infringing on your rights, you can't, we support the police. It can't be an absolute. It has to be conditional. We support the police as long as they are abiding by the Constitution and supporting and defending the Constitution. When they are supporting and defending unconstitutional laws, when they're protecting corrupt, compromised, governors or mayors, then fuck the police. And the right has yet, until today, they have yet to connect those dots. But today, now they're starting to spray the cops with bear mace. Good. I'm glad they're spraying the cops with bear mace. Fuck them.
I agree.
Also, fuck anyone. Like, and if you're a cop in Portland, fuck you. The good cops have all quit. The ones who are still working for the Portland mayor, like, again, this mayor is like defunding the police, letting cops get killed, letting rioters go without charging them, letting the city burn to the ground. The fuck are you doing working for them? Like, oh, well, it's a paycheck. It's but not only are they working for these mayors and these police chiefs as they let the rioters go, burn the city down, they're also going out and arresting people who defend themselves. So when Antifa or Black Lives Matter get arrested for burning a Target down and looting or rioting, they're let go, no charges. But then they'll be like some Facebook feed of a guy pointing a gun at a crowd saying, get the fuck off my lawn. I have a gun. Leave my family alone. and they'll show up at that guy's house and arrest him for third-degree assault for pointing a gun at peaceful protesters. Now, as a cop, at that point, when you're not only just turning, it's one thing to basically sit on your hands and do nothing and let shit happen around you, but when you're actively arresting people for defending themselves because you are not enforcing the law, and I'm not saying it's the cop's fault, like the mayors and the chiefs of police are giving them orders, but when you have your boss telling you, let these rioters go, let them murder people, let them burn cities down, but then arrest these people for defending themselves, and you go and slap cuffs on them, you are now you're an enemy.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck about your family. I don't give a fuck about, I'm just following orders. That's exactly what the Nazi soldiers said when they were being tried for war crimes. Every single fucking Nazi soldier who was like working in these concentration camps or whatever, they were asked, like, how could you let this happen? Didn't you question it? At least, don't you see how fucked up this was? I'm like, yeah, I wasn't following orders. It's like, well, okay, hang them. Like, what do you say to that?
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck if you're following orders. Like, you swore an oath to support and like, the difference between a soldier and a mercenary is a soldier swears an oath to support and defend the Constitution and the country. They have an oath. That's what makes them different than a mercenary. A mercenary is just there for a paycheck. They're not going to give their life for their country. They're not swearing an oath to support and uphold anything more noble than a paycheck. So if you're just a mercenary, then fuck you. I have no pity, no mercy for mercenaries. If you're just following orders for a paycheck, and you don't give a fuck about your oaths or the Constitution or this country or anything, fuck you. And I'm glad you were bear maced, and I hope it's worse next time.
I agree, definitely.
So anyway, back to no-go zones. The good news is the right is getting on board with this very quickly. Very, very quickly. So, I mean, I guess I've been ahead of the curve. I've been seeing things coming down the pipe, in the next 5 to 10 years, but I wasn't expecting this to kind of become more mainstream within the year. But now you have a lot of people like realizing that when the government has become compromised and essentially illegitimate, what can you do? What are your options? Well, you can't just vote them out, because now we live in a country where we have voter fraud that's completely accepted. Like, the other side can cheat and get away with it, and there's nothing you can do. So, all right, so voting is now off the table. Now what? Well, so like, other than civil war, that's clearly the obvious answer, but there's a middle ground. There's like something we could try before civil war, which is a no-go zone, where you let the left have the government because they stole it and no one's going to do anything. Okay, so you control the government, congratulations. And then you just concentrate into a certain area. And then the left can pass whatever laws they want. And then you could just ignore them. And the government, what are they going to do? And there's so many examples of this. Like, I mean, there's violent examples, like the Muslims in Europe. If you go to France or Germany or the UK or Sweden, a lot of these Muslim immigrants have created little communities. That's where the word no-go zone originated, was in these Muslim enclaves in Europe. They all live together, and they basically force the government out. They tell the government, you're not welcome here. We don't want you here. Now, the difference between the no-go zones of the Muslims and like the black community in America is the Muslim no-go zones police themselves. They don't call the cops. The cops don't go down there, but they maintain law and order themselves. They have what are called Sharia patrols. And these are basically completely unlawful, unregulated vigilante groups that answer only to the community itself. And they drive their own cars, and they have vests, and they go around arresting people completely unlawfully, but the government doesn't do anything as long as it's within their communities. And they have their own parallel court system and their own shadow government. That's a no-go zone. Now compare that to the black community in America, where everyone just kind of sits in their little ghetto, but they call the regular cops when something happens. Maybe the cops show up 45 minutes later, but it's still the cops. They don't have their own law and order system, their own police, their own court system. It's basically warlords and gangs, and like the police are just trying to protect some of the good people, but then everyone hates them for doing their job. it's a no-win situation. So I'm not saying be like the black ghettos, because those are a fucking nightmare. But if you look at the Muslim no-go zones, they are completely autonomous. Now they get welfare from the government. Don't get me wrong. The government is giving them lots of money to placate them. But as far as the laws go, they're completely exempt. And I'll give you a perfect example. There was an article we covered a few months ago on my show. In France, during March, the height of the COVID scare, when we hadn't yet peaked and flattened the curve, when everyone thought we were like millions of people were going to die and people were legitimately terrified. During that time, France was basically had standing orders to arrest anybody who broke curfew, who wasn't wearing a mask, who wasn't socially distancing. Like, you had to stay in your home or they would arrest you unless you were Muslim. They were basically told
I remember
that if the Muslims are wandering the streets, just to leave them alone. If they're not wearing masks, leave them alone. Don't mess with them. And the reason why was because they were terrified of rioting and terrorism. And then what happened was a Muslim teen on a moped scooter crashed his scooter into a parked cop car. And the Muslims flipped their shit and said that the cops hit them with this car, even though they hit a parked cop car. And the Muslims wouldn't listen to their explanation. So they rioted anyway. And so the cops who were parked had to apologize for parking where this guy on his moped scooter crashed into their parked cop car. But that's the power of a no-go zone. The government is, especially now the Muslims are a unique example because they're very, very violent. So the government isn't just leaving them alone because they're numbers. They're also leaving them alone because the sheer amount of murder they can commit if you piss them off. That's why in the UK, for example, they will arrest you if you complain about the terrorism or the grooming gangs, but they won't do anything about the terrorism and the grooming gangs because they're just trying to keep the peace. Now, the Muslims, you might be like, well, that won't work in America, TFM, because you can't advocate for that type of violence and terrorism. That's horrible. That's unconscionable. The good news is there's plenty of examples in America of groups that operate very similarly to the Muslims without the terrorism, without the violence. So the two examples I have are the Amish and the Orthodox Jews. So the Orthodox Jews operate out of New York City. They were in the news recently too. So Cuomo, it was either the governor or the mayor.
He's one or the other. I can't remember.
One or the other.
I did a video on that one on my other channel, the Internal Sadist channel. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so the mayor was the same mayor was allowing Black Lives Matter to riot and actually painted Black Lives Matter outside of Trump's tower with taxpayer money. So, the mayor was all about virtue signaling and standing shoulder to shoulder with Black Lives Matter while they were rioting and burning the city down. The Orthodox Jews just wanted to be left alone to have their little religious gatherings and celebrate things like weddings and whatnot. And the mayor was saying that, no, that wasn't allowed because of COVID. So you could riot and burn shit down and murder people as long as it benefits the Democrats. But if you aren't benefiting the Democrats, if you're just having some religious gathering, then nope, that's dangerous for the COVID. So they decided to just do it anyway. And the cops were called. And so the rabbi and the people in New York City found out who snitched. They beat the living shit out of him. And actually, I heard from Halsey. So they didn't just beat the shit out of him. His wife left him because that community is so tight knit that his life was over. And if she didn't divorce him, then it would ruin her life too. So they beat the shit out of him. And then his wife left him. It took his kids away for snitching on the community. And this is the best part. When the cops showed up, they beat the cops up too. They didn't shoot them. They didn't kill them.
I remember that.
They beat the fucking cops up, and they beat up the reporters who came down to cover it. They beat them up too. They beat the fuck out of everyone. They beat up the cops, the snitch, the reporters, anyone who showed up trying to fucking flex, and they beat the fucking shit out of them. And there's millions of Orthodox Jews in New York City. And so the mayor was like, oh, we're going to do this. And then within a week, the mayor's like, we came to an agreement. And they the government will always blink because think about it. What is the government? Government is a social construct. We created the government. The government is us. The government is just people. They have paper authority, but you have to they're just people. It doesn't like think about it. They're just people. If you have more people than they do, and you don't respect their authority, they have nothing other than like coming in there and oppressing you with guns and shooting you, which they're not going to do. They're not going to do that. So when the governor's like, okay, just like with the no-go zones in Europe, if we send cops, they're going to beat us up. And are we prepared to shoot all these people? Probably not. So they fucking put their tail between their legs and they fucked off and they let them do whatever they want. That's how a no-go zone works. You see this all throughout the world. Nagaland in northeastern India is there. So Nagaland, the people of Nagaland are Christian. They're not Hindu, and they're also not cucked at all. They're very patriarchal. In fact, the women in Nagaland, just like the Muslim women in these no-go zones, complain to the government saying that the men aren't respecting their rights because they actually have patriarchy in Nagaland. And so the government will occasionally send officials to try to enforce the law, and the men will burn their cars down, burn their buildings down, and send them packing. And so the government just doesn't fuck around with them. They're like, you know what? You're on your own, lady. And that's the thing. When you have a united community, the government will blink. They won't fuck with you because it's not worth it. Now, if you're a violent, non-contributing, bunch of criminals, like you're like the drug cartels, they might see that as like a rival system. But if you're like just paying your taxes, not bothering, you just want to be left alone, it's much easier for the government to say, just leave them alone. They're paying their taxes, leave them alone. Like if you're not paying your taxes or you're threatening secession, that's when they'll attack you with the military. But if you're paying your taxes, you just want to say, hey, leave us alone. Plus, if you have the numbers, all the local politicians will be your guys anyway. So the mayor, the police, all the city council, they're all your guys. So you basically capture the local government. And then, you could have the governor or whatever try to do some shit, but everyone at the local level are your guys, and you have millions of people in your community, and you're just going to straight up ignore the government. So the government can leave you alone and collect your taxes, or they can start some shit, but it's not going to end well, and they're not going to get anything out of it anyway. And so most people are going to be the rational. They're going to take the rational choice, and they're going to leave you alone. And that's how no-go zones work. They don't require terrorism or violence, but they do require unity. And they occasionally require you to beat the shit out of some people. Like Halsey has some stories from Israel where the Orthodox Jewish community there will throw dirty diapers and rocks at people when they fuck with them. So now in Israel, the Orthodox Jews are 20% of the population. They're a huge population, and they're very patriarchal. So there's, Israel, like Jews in general, is very diverse when it comes to ideologies. So there's some leftist Jews in Israel. And so there were these feminist Jews who wanted to wear these skin tight type of jogging outfits and jog through the Orthodox Jewish community to basically show them how they're standing up against patriarchy. And everyone pelted them with rocks and dirty diapers. And so the feminists deserved it. Well, then the feminists ran away and called the cops. The cops showed up to investigate who threw the rocks and the dirty diapers. They set dumpsters on fire, barricaded the road, and then threw rocks and dirty diapers at the cops.
They had it coming.
but because they barricaded the road with flaming dumpsters, there was no way they could get any kind of like anything in there. Like, again, are you going to fucking liquidate 20% of your population? And it is also the population having all the kids because they're patriarchal. You're not going to. So they shut the fuck up and they fucked off, which is how no-go zones work. But you have to have the numbers. So people like to bring up the Branch Davidians as an example of a group that the government just crushed. They literally burned them alive. All you got to do is look up how big were the Branch Davidians. I'll save you the trouble of the Google search. 80 people.
Facts.
Not 80,000, not 800, 80. 80 people, less than 100 people was the entirety of the Branch Davidians. That's why they were burned alive. They had 80 people. Now, look, let's use another example of a criminal cult that is largely left alone by the government, which is the fundamentalist Mormons, the ones who live in the compounds and marry kids. They're largely left alone, aside from the one guy, the guy who was in charge. He was on the FBI's most wanted list because he was like marrying underage girls. But Other than him, the church as a whole is left alone. There have been no big raids, no huge mass arrests, even though they married kids, because there's 10,000 of them. Now, it's not even that many. 10,000 is not that many, but it's enough. That's all it takes. Now, in the United States of America, the right in general, we're talking like how many people voted for Donald Trump this last election? 72 million.
Yeah.
That is so much more than enough. It's not even funny.
It is.
And in fact, when I talk to like white nationalists or people on the alt-right, which I vehemently disagree with, and what's the word I'm looking for? Not recant, but not condemn either. Anyway, there's a word I'm searching for that I can't remember. But anyway, so I don't agree with them, but also, like, I understand that we have a common enemy, so I actually do want to give them genuine advice to help them, because common enemy.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. They did a poll several years ago asking what percentage of white people are ideologically in agreement with the alt-right. Like if you ask them a questionnaire, like, do you agree with these statements? What percentage of white people agree with the alt-right? And it came out to about 6%. Which means 94% of white people don't agree with the alt-right, but 6% do. And if you run the numbers, that's like 1 million people.
I'm going to say something that's probably going to shock everybody. I'm black. I'm Afro-Latino, and I agree with the alt-right sometimes.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not
100% with them. They do say a lot of stuff where I go, yeah, you went a bit too far.
I don't agree with them at all. But here's the difference. I recognize that my values aren't objectively universal.
Yeah.
I can appreciate the fact that the world I would be happiest in, the world that would be best for me, isn't what's best for everyone. The world is big enough for everyone. So I may disagree with you, but you have a right to live according to your values as much as anyone else has a right to live according to their values. So even if I think you're a horrible racist and whatever, and you want your little ethno state, if you're happy, as long as you're not hurting anyone, I have 3 rules: don't hurt anyone, don't abuse children, and don't cost anyone money. As long as you abide by those 3 rules, I don't really give a shit. So if you want to have your little white ethno state and have inbred white babies, and you want to have a mercantilist economy with protectionism, I don't care. If that's genuinely what makes you happy, I want you to be happy. As long as you're not hurting anyone or abusing children or costing anyone money, I don't care. So,
I agree. I basically only agree with them on the fact that I understand their core gripe that they feel as though white people are being eliminated or.
Well, they are. They're
at a high rate. So I actually agree with them on that point. Like as far as like other craziness is like I can listen to their thing. I can listen to what they got to say because I respect other people's opinions and their freedom of speech. And I look at it like this. I'm the type of person, if you can make me believe it, and it's not something that's a talking point, and you actually believe it, and it's your conviction, I ride with you 100%.
Well,
and I got your back, but I do disagree with you, but I can actually respect the fact that you have this opinion.
It's different. So they're right on the diagnosis. They're wrong on the cure.
Yeah.
So yes, white people are going extinct. That's a fact. Look at the white birth rates compared. Now that's the diagnosis is correct. There is demographic replacement. There is white civilization, white culture is being erased and replaced. All
that's the part that I agree with 100%. I feel bad for them on that one.
The problem is what's causing it, who's causing it, and why is it happening? Their retarded obsession with the Jews not only is counterproductive and wrong, it wastes valuable time and energy and deflects from the actual problem. And the reason it's deliberate too. The reason why they blame the Jews is because the very system that they advocate for is the problem.
Yeah.
So they want to go back to the good old days of like where everyone was white and everybody was Christian. They want to go back to that traditional, classical, European society. The problem is it was that very same classical European society that caused the problem. The main problems of like the low birth rates is the empowerment of women. Well, now I'm talking like put down the fucking alt-right propaganda, actually open up a history book. where did feminism come from? It didn't come from the Jews. It came from the social gospel movement, which started in America after the Civil War, up until 1920. The social gospel movement was started by Christians, and it was also what started the progressive movement. They were both started by Protestant Christians who rejected obviously Catholicism, and they also rejected these dogmatic differences in interpretations of Scripture. So progressivism started out as a bunch of denominations who wanted to put aside doctrinal differences and disputes. They were tired of fighting other Christians on like different interpretations of the Bible. They wanted to do what Jesus would do. They wanted to help the poor. They wanted to, live a Christ-like life. And what that manifested at was a de-emphasis of doctrine and an emphasis on, service, particularly to the poor and disadvantaged. And that took the form of the social gospel movement. And then that evolved into the progressive movement, which evolved into progressivism. No Jews necessary. So the reason why they deflect to blaming Jews for everything is because their solution caused the problem. They think that Jesus and more religion will solve the problem, when it was Jesus and religion that caused the problem. And as far as their ethno-state stuff, the reason why they want an ethno-state is because they're broke-ass white people on welfare, and they want to preserve the welfare state for themselves. And they perceive that they see minorities taking all their welfare. They think that because they're white and the taxpayers are generally white, that welfare belongs to them. And I know this because I've talked to a few of them, and I tell them, if you just abolish the welfare state, people will self-deport. And I even have articles from, I think, Finland, where they cut welfare to the Syrian refugees, and they just left. They self-deported as soon as the welfare got cut. So if you really want an ethno-state, instead of having like a race war and kicking all the brown people out, why don't you just get rid of the welfare state, and all the broke-ass brown people that you hate so much will just leave and go somewhere else? And the other benefit of that is, without the welfare state, women are always dependent on men. They always have been, they always will be. But with the welfare state, women can basically cosplay as independent adults because they have the government providing what men traditionally provide. So they can cosplay and pretend that they're strong, independent women that don't need no man, because the government is taking men's money and giving it to them. So they don't have to submit to a man to have a man take care of them directly. They can have men take care of them indirectly through welfare. So you solve both problems by abolishing welfare. You also, all these single mothers will go away. All these single mothers will get married and stay married because that's the only way they get taken care of without welfare. And then you also get rid of the minorities who are there for welfare. And no one is interested in abolishing welfare because they're broke-ass white people who are on welfare. So their very goal, their white ethno-state with welfare for white people and more Jesus, is literally what caused the problem. So their diagnosis is correct. White genocide, demographic replacement, the death of white culture and society is all 100% true. The prescription that it's all the Jews' fault, it's all this and that, degeneracy, we need more Jesus and racism, that's 100% wrong. And I can prove it. I have all the facts on my side. All they have is like made up bullshit. Like they have like literal shit they made up, like this thing called the Caligari Plan. It's like a book that they wrote out of nothing like 20 years ago, and they reference it like it's this like secret document they found. They pulled it straight out of their fucking ass. It's not based on anything real. Or they have like this so-called Rockefeller interview. This guy who was like a hoax charlatan said that he talked to the Rockefellers, and he was a known hoax bullshitter, and he did an interview on InfoWars of all places, and then he died like some illness like a year or two later. That interview though has been like spliced up. All the InfoWars watermarks have been removed, and some guy showed me this video of this guy saying he's a Rockefeller and that they personally invented feminism to destroy the white family and everything like that. And that doesn't make any sense because I actually know history. I know where feminism actually came from. And then I looked into that interview, and it was like a fucking InfoWars interview with a bullshit artist who was a known bullshit artist. And then who, it's like, that's all they have. They have complete and utter bullshit that they point to as their proof. And they don't know anything about history. They don't have any actual facts on their side. But they're so married to their preferred solution of white ethno-state plus Jesus. and they refuse to listen to anyone telling you that like that's actually what's the problem. The welfare and the empowerment of women caused by Christianity is what fucked Europe and the West. And so you can't go back to that because that's just going to cause the problem to happen again. Like you might reset the clock, but that's like going from stage 4 cancer to stage 1 cancer. Like you got to cure the cancer. If you want to have a long, happy life, you got to cut the cancer out, not just put it into remission back to stage 1 so it can get malignant and grow again. But they don't want to hear that because that's not what it's just not the solution they want. And the dumbest part is their preferred solution, which is the white ethno state. We can see that in real life in Japan. Japan is everything the white nationalists wish they had. It's a nationalistic, xenophobic, ethnocentric ethno state of the Japanese for the Japanese, and it is dying. And when push comes to shove, when their aging population was crying, and they realized the only way to keep the welfare state going for our seniors is to open our borders to immigration, or we could taper off the benefits. They chose to open their borders to immigration. This is the Japanese, the xenophobic, racist, nationalistic Japanese. When it came down to their precious welfare state, they opened their borders to immigration too. Mm-hmm. That's how corrupting welfare is. And so the Japanese people have no future. Their country is fucked. It won't even exist in 50 years because they're not having any kids. Their birth rate is shit. And now they've opened up their borders to immigration. They're going to be in the same boat as Europe. The exact same boat. So that was supposedly the big solution people were pointing to. Like, look at Japan. We can do what Japan's doing. You are doing what Japan's doing. Like, the only difference between Japan and Europe is Europe basically swallowed the immigration pill a lot sooner. But now when push came to shove, when it came down to either getting rid of their welfare state or turning to immigration and allowing the slow destruction of their culture, that free money, man, they can't turn down that free money. So they'd rather see their culture die and everything they built go away and their people go extinct than not get free shit from the government. And that's just really sad. But it just, now when you look at that in real time, denying, it's continuing to advocate for the ethno-state model when Japan is essentially dying. It's like advocating for communism while Venezuela is starving to death. Like this isn't theoretical. It's failing right now. You're advocating for a system that is already failing right now. Like this isn't like, 100 years ago that was tried, but we could try it again. No, it's failing right now. So, like, if you're serious about the future of your people and your culture and your society, then you need to pull your head out of your fucking ass. Stop blaming Jews. Stop thinking Jesus is the answer. The answer is take women's rights away and get rid of welfare. Now, you can have your monarchy, fascist dictatorship. That's irrelevant. If you really want that, I don't know why you would. I don't know why you think you're going to be if you want to be in a monarchy or a dictatorship, I don't know why you think you're going to be in the ruling class. You think you're not going to be a serf when you're a broke ass white person trying to preserve your welfare. I don't know where you get off thinking that you're going to be like one of the Nazi generals or something. You're going to be a fucking serf. You're not going to be in the ruling class. You're a broke ass white person. Anyway, it's dumb.
Yeah, I know.
That's my piece on the alt-right. I love you because I want to help you because we have a common enemy in the communists, but you guys are really fucking stupid. And I really wish you're stuck on it too. I really wish you'd get off of it because I'd love to fucking go fucking raise some communists with you, but you guys really need to get off the fucking Jew shit.
I agree with you 100% on that one.
All right. Anyway, okay. So you wanted to know how you get started. Okay. So here's some actionable steps. So you need to, when think of it like going to a doctor.
Yeah.
And you have a symptom, and it could be 100 things. So the doctor has to run tests to see what the actual diagnosis is. So here's some tests you need to do to know what the diagnosis is for your situation. It's going to be different person to person. There's no one size fits all. This is what you do. But step number 1, you need to know whether the place you're currently in can be a no-go zone. And the way you do that is very, very simple. Get off your fucking ass and talk to your neighbors. It's that simple. knock on your neighbors' doors, introduce yourselves, talk to them, make friends with your neighbors, invite them to a barbecue. I mean, it's Christmas. If you just go to go to Walmart, buy some cheap Walmart, buy like a mug and some candy, and go to all your neighbors and be like, Merry Christmas. I'm your neighbor. I live at that house down the road. My name's Bill. I'm just saying hi. I got you this, just introducing myself. Merry Christmas. And you basically put in a good word with your neighbors. Chat them up, don't just spring this on them initially. You might need to build some rapport for a while, but here's the goal. You want to get a feel for your neighbors, whether they share your values. This is crucial. A no-go. Well, the thing is, what is a nation? What is a people? What is a culture? It's shared values. Everything is about shared values. So you need to know: do you share values with your neighbors? And if you live in like a blue state, you might not. If you care about freedom, and all of your neighbors care about equality, and they're all leftists, and they're all for communism and the Great Reset, then you need to get the fuck out of there. There's no-go zone happening there. You need to get the fuck out. Now, let's say you talk to your neighbors, and your neighbors are cool. They agree with your values. Then you start building a small group. You don't need 1 million people. That's going to take a lot of time. You can start a little group. You can call it, like during the riots, neighbors would get together and start like a neighborhood watch. And Terrence Popp did a video like how to start a militia. You don't have to start a militia, like an official militia. You can just get together with your neighbors and, just be like, hey, wasn't that crazy? The riots that are happening, I got a gun. Do you have a gun? Oh, you do have a gun. Well, we should have each other's backs in case it's like a riot forming. We should like form up because, 2 heads are better than 1. Many hands make light work. You talk to your neighbors, you get like a couple dozen of them together. Let me give you a story from Hurricane Katrina, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, however long it was back. So the levees in Louisiana broke and New Orleans completely flooded. And it was it's pretty crazy. Like, essentially, no one could get to these people. The government had basically failed. And these people were basically completely on their own. There were people in these areas that had guns, and they were basically keeping the looters off of their shit by pointing guns at them. Now, I want to say the mayor, it might have been the governor, can't remember. He ordered that these guns be confiscated completely illegally and unconstitutionally, but he ordered the cops to come take these guns away. So these people were sitting in their homes, keeping these looters off their shit, and the cops would show up like, oh, thank goodness the cops are finally here. And the cops would like tackle them and take their guns and leave. And then the looters would come and take their shit and rape them. That's just, good job, guy. But once people realized that cops were going on or taking people's guns, people started forming up. So, if you were like one guy with your gun defending your home, cops would pull up, pull guns on you, tell you to get on the ground, take your gun and leave. So they went down one block, and the whole neighborhood was pointing guns at them. So you get the fuck out of here. Like, oh, you got to turn over your guns. Like, we're not doing shit. Get the fuck out of here. You got like 6 guns pointed at you right now. So you can leave and just don't come back, or like your story ends right now. It's your choice. And they left, and nothing happened because that law was completely unconstitutional that they were trying to enforce anyway. But the point is just a small, like a fucking cul-de-sac of neighbors pointing their guns when the cops came to illegally seize their guns made the cops turn around and run. And that's all it takes. It depends on the scale you're trying to address. So if you're trying to address looting and rioting, a dozen or so people is enough. There's plenty of video. In fact, there's a video. I call her Black Karen. So
I think I know what you're talking about.
There's this video of this black woman who is losing her fucking mind because she pulled. So these Muslims all owned like a strip mall in this city. And so they had parked their cars like horizontally to basically block the inlet to the strip mall. So no one could get in because these cars were blocking the inlet. And they were sitting on their fucking outside their businesses with AK-47s. And this woman was like, you can't have AK-47s. She's basically flipping her shit because her people were going to come and burn everything down and loot everything. And these Muslims were like, fuck you, we have AK-47s. And the best part is you could see some of them were black, because you got like black Muslims from like Africa and whatnot. And they were standing with the Muslims rather than with Black Lives Matter looting and shit. They'd rather defend their businesses instead of get free Nikes or something. Anyway, so Black Karen was flipping her shit, videotaping and everything. And then after that, she went down and she found some white cops saying, "Oh, there's some Arabs over there, and they got AK-47s." And the white cops kind of giggled at her, like, "Oh, we can't do anything about that." And it's just, I can't there's no better picture of what a no-go zone, what the practical use of it is. So with just a dozen or so people, you could turn away a mob. A fucking mob, a Black Lives Matter Antifa mob, are not going to fuck with you when you have like a dozen people with AK-47s pointed at them. They will fuck off because they don't want to die. And this is where like you had the rooftop Koreans in like the LA riots back in the 90s. Like very long, illustrious history of just a small group of people turning away entire mobs to go fuck off. Now, when you talk about the government, telling the government to fuck off, you need significantly more numbers. So then you need like thousands of people. Now look like Irania. Irania has over 1,000 people. They have like 1,500 or 2,000. It's somewhat iffy. The government. So in South Africa, it's like basically open season on white people. It's like you can kill white people, no one will do anything. It's like illegal, but it's like jaywalking illegal.
Gotcha.
So white people are, the smart white people, frankly, left. But the ones who couldn't leave or didn't want to leave for whatever reason, the smart one, they basically come in three groups. There's the white people who left South Africa. There's the white people who joined no-go zones. And then there's white people who are basically chilling on their farms that have been in their families for generations. They don't want to abandon them. Just wondering if today's the day where their farm gets raided and they're murdered along with their whole families. But that's their life. But the ones who go into the no-go zones like Irania, it's basically just a white community of over 1,000 people, and they have their own cryptocurrency. They basically take care of again, just like with the Muslims in Europe, they have their own court system, their own legal system, their own currency. They basically have their own government, and they take care of people in their community, and they don't take a dime from the government. The government doesn't help them at all. They don't fucking even want the government. They want the government to leave them the fuck alone. And they do whatever they want, and they just ignore the government. And one day, I'm sure when the government goes bankrupt and the food runs out, it's going to be like the Battle of Helm's Deep, with like all these fucking black people crashing against the walls like fucking two towers. But that'll be fun. Be fun for them. But they have over 1,000 people. And the thing is, it's always easier to defend than to attack, if you know anything about siege warfare. So even if you're outnumbered 2 or 3 to 1, if you have home field advantage and you're defending and you have walls and guns and like artillery, you will fuck their shit up.
Facts.
You will fuck their shit up. And we're talking like African military. We're not talking about like fucking SEAL Team 6. We're talking like fucking Muhammad and his fucking brother Muhammad charging you with a fucking stick.
Yeah. Flip-flops, rocks, and
they're gonna fuck.
And camels with jetpacks on it.
Well, it's gonna be like the Two Towers with like the orcs charging the castle, getting the shit pushed in. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that's how it works in South Africa, and they only have 1,000 people. And again, in America, we have the fundamentalist Mormons that have 10,000 people, and they can rape kids and get away with it. And then you have the Orthodox Jews who have 1 million people. They can beat up cops and get away with it. So it's all a numbers game. It's all a numbers game. And the thing is there's plenty of people, and this might be a blessing. So if you asked me 6 months ago, are there going to be no-go zones for like your average Joe? Because I talk to people. I've been talking about no-go zones for months, and I get people who ask me, where am I supposed to go? I'm just like a white guy. I'm an American white guy. I don't have any country to run to. I don't have a community. My family are just regular old white people. What the fuck am I supposed to do? And 6 months ago, I really didn't have a good answer for that. I basically said, start with your family and see what you can do. But now, with the election being stolen, and the right is like seriously like starting to flip their shit, there might be some actual American no-go zones propping up. So if the left steals the government and the right knows that elections are basically meaningless at this point, the right is going to start to become ungovernable. And we're talking like 70 plus million Americans who are just going to like do whatever the fuck they want and not give a shit. Look, this is going to end in a civil war, just so you know. Like, if you cannot just steal people, like, you cannot steal elections from like the main reason why, because we still have gun rights.
Yeah.
Like, you don't steal elections against armed people, you fucking idiot. What were you thinking? So it's fine, but this is a good thing. I'd rather have a civil war than have just a slow boiling frog, slow introduction of more and more, like what's happening in the UK, where, oh, you voted for Brexit? Fuck you. Oh, we're taking your knives away. Oh, you complained about Muslims raping your kids. You're going to jail. And it's just like one insult compiled on another, but nobody can do anything because they don't have guns.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I don't want. I'm not going to sit in a fucking country just putting up with endless bullshit forever and ever because no one will ever do anything because our fucking penises have been sucked into our bodies and become manginas. So I'd much rather have a civil war, because then at least there's something fighting for. Like, if your freedom is completely taken away and you're just a slave and there's no hope of ever being freed, then all you have left in your life is mechanical existence. You don't have anything to live for. Just another meal, another shit, another nap. So I'd rather fight for the hope of a brighter tomorrow than just mechanically exist for decades until I eventually keel over and have nothing to show for it because I was a slave.
I agree.
So, and the good news is if the right starts creating legit no-go zones, and it won't just be like one here, we're talking millions of people. Millions of people are going to say, fuck you. Like, we're not listening to you. We're going to do our thing. And so there's going to be plenty of places to go to. If you live in the city, if you live in a blue state, you might have to leave. You might have to move. And that's fine. So just move. And then move somewhere else. And here's the good news. There's a lot of things coming together which make things a lot easier than they otherwise would be. So while the right is starting to wake up to the need to have community and the need to buckle down and resist government, you also have this is going to seem like completely unrelated. You have Elon Musk creating Starlink, which is going to be affordable global 5G satellite internet. Now, why is that important? Because for pretty much ever, if you wanted high-speed internet, which is basically required for most, especially now, even if you have a work from home job, you need good, fast internet. You can't work from home on a 56K modem. So you need good, fast internet. And if you live in a rural area, you don't have good, fast internet. You have expensive as shit satellite internet, and you have slow as shit DSL internet. And so that's not good if you want to do any kind of online business. And so a lot of times you have to live either in a city or in a suburb of a city so you can get decent internet and decent utilities. And then you're at the mercy of that government telling you what to do, because you don't, basically, if you live in the rural areas, you have to basically work some kind of farming job or something like that. And not everybody wants to be a farmer or has any desire to that, but they don't have a choice. But once we have global 5G internet, you can live anywhere. If you want to live in the fucking mountains, you can still have high-speed internet and do your job, whatever that may be, completely off the grid. And now, once people disperse to the fucking winds, what the fuck are you gonna do now? They're living in the fucking woods, like you can't even find them.
True.
And then you can get like these vans that have like the solar panels. So you live in a van with a solar panel, and now you have high-speed internet because of Starlink. You can have an online job and work full time in the woods with no bills, no taxes, like fucking take a bath in the river, fucking go hunt squirrel meat or something, or whatever the fuck, and completely off the grid and making good income. And then you can go to the gym, take a shower, or you could go to an internet cafe or something like that. I don't think they even have internet cafes anymore. Go to a Starbucks or something and just use their internet for free. Like, there was a time, I'm dating myself even bringing up the concept of an internet cafe where you had to pay for internet access.
Don't feel bad. I remember internet cafes. I just didn't want to mention it until you did.
Yeah. Right. Well, so but what I'm saying is this lifestyle wasn't really feasible 20 years ago,
Mhm.
and now it is. So things are going to change. Just honestly, the most important thing to do is stay flexible, but also understand that survival isn't to use a video game analogy, you can't solo queue and expect to survive an economic or societal collapse. If you try to go it alone, I don't care how badass you are, you can only see in one direction and you have to sleep sometime. And someone can get to drop on you and then it's game over. So if you're by yourself, no matter how badass you are, you're dead. It's more important to have a group. It's more important to have people.
Very true.
So have people. And this is why, one of the other questions people ask me is, well, where should I look for my no-go zone? Where are your people? And this is going to be a very personal question. There is no right or wrong answer. It's where are your people? Now, if you don't have a ready-made answer for that, think about where does your family concentrated? Generally, if you ask where's your family, they usually all kind of live nearby. There might be one town where 75% of your family live. You have your great-great-grandma and your aunts and uncles and your cousins. They all live in one area. Now you might have different relations all over the place, but there might be one central area where the majority of your family live. Those are your people. Start with your family. Now, if you have bad relationship with your family for whatever reason, you need to think about whether it's worth burying the hatchet or whether it's worth starting over from nothing. It's always when you got to understand when the government collapses, if that should happen within our lifetimes, trust is a very precious commodity. And generally, people aren't going to trust people who don't have any tie to them. So if you're not related or if you're a different race or whatever, you're going to be mistrusted. In fact, if something goes wrong and you need a scapegoat and you stick out like a sore thumb, they're going to blame you. Let's say you're a black guy and you join some community where you're the only black guy. And then there's a traitor among them. They're just going to suspect it's you. But it must be the black guy. Now, it might be this fucking, redheaded white guy over there, but they're just going to blame the black guy because he's different. That's just human nature. And you need to appreciate that if you aren't a member of the majority, they're going to blame you for everything. They're going to target you for anything that goes wrong. You're always going to feel like an outsider. So if all things considered, try to bury the hatchet with your family. Maybe not your immediate family. Like if you and your mom or your brothers and sisters had a really bad falling out, maybe try to hang out with your cousins or your aunts and uncles or something. But those are, now again, this is just a starting point. Maybe that doesn't work for you. Then if you can't start with your family, you have to think about your values and possibly religion. Now, the reason why patriarchy and religion tend to go hand in hand in the West is because of religious freedom. So any other patriarchal structure has been abolished in the name of equality. If you had a non-religious patriarchal community or organization, it was destroyed and sued into extinction in the name of equality. But religion had an exemption because of religious freedom. So religious organizations could be as patriarchal as they want, and they were fine. But if you had a club for men, not like a gentleman's club, like a strip club, but like an actual gentleman's club that excluded women, where guys went and smoked pipes and talked about business, those were absolutely shut down because they excluded women. But if they were religion, they were allowed to exist. Now, what this does is creates a false correlation where people think that you can't have patriarchy without religion, which is false. It's just that in the West, non-religious patriarchies have been abolished because of inequality, but religious patriarchy has been allowed to exist. Now, this is unfortunately, you have to basically work within reality. So as it stands now, if you want to live in a patriarchal society, you're going to have to adapt to some type of religion. So depending on your ethnicity or your family history or whatever, you may have to convert, whether that's, maybe a more fundamentalist Catholic denomination, maybe an Orthodox denomination, maybe something like the Amish or the Mennonites, something basically a patriarchal, traditional, fundamentalist religion. And if you're going to have to assimilate. Don't try to join them and just keep on doing what you're doing. You're going to have to make an honest effort to assimilate to that culture, and they're probably not going to accept you for a couple generations. But again, the main goal is survival, not complete acceptance and equality. You're not going to be like, I'm one of you. That's probably not going to happen within your lifetime. But if you ingratiate yourself to that society, then you'll live and you'll have a place to stay, and you might even be able to have a family that has a future, as opposed to the opposite. So you have to basically do the best you can with what you have instead of bitching about, well, it's not perfect, because nothing ever is. So if you can't find so family is the first place you look. Then you might want to look at religion. Then race is the next one, but race is very flaky. So you have like Chinatown and you have like Little Italy, but those places, here's what's fucked up. Those places only exist because of persecution. The reason why like the Irish all bunched up and the reason why there's places like Little Italy was because in the early years of America, Catholics were being persecuted by the Protestants. The Protestants were the norm and the Catholics were the exception. So they were being persecuted. So the Catholic communities banded together and formed no-go zones. That's where Little Italy came from. That's why there's all these Irish up in Boston. They were banding together out of mutual protection from the persecution of Catholics at that time. Now that the persecution of Catholics is basically a memory, Little Italies are gone. Little German towns are gone. All the little Catholic communities have basically gone away because they're not being persecuted anymore. So ironically, these communities form because of persecution, because of hardship, and they go away when that hardship goes away. So, I don't know if there's a way to bring that back artificially, or you just have to wait for the persecution to get ratcheted up, and then the communities will basically start to form again. But if you can't form a community based on your family or your religion, you might be able to do your race, but it can't be white people. Because if you go back 100 years, there's no such thing as a white person. People were British, French, German, Italian, Greek, whatever. No one thought of themselves as white. This idea of being a white person didn't really exist 100 years ago. People had an ethnic identity. So in fact, the two groups who don't have an ethnic identity, who have a racial identity, are the groups who basically don't have a nation, or they didn't. Essentially, African Americans and Jews. And the reason why is very simple. Jews were driven out of their homeland thousands of years ago by the Roman emperor, what's his name? Hadrian. Hadrian fucked their shit up. So because Hadrian took their homeland away, they no longer had any kind of national identity. All they had was religious and racial identity. Now, African Americans were in a different but similar situation. When the slavers picked them up from West Africa, no one bothered to record what country they came from. And so after a few generations of slaves being bought and sold and mixed and whatever, no one had any sense of like, where the fuck did I come from? They basically had their national identity stolen from them. So without their national identity, all they had was, well, we're black. So that's all we have. I can't be like, well, I'm from Ethiopia and I'm from Kenya and I'm from Sudan. No, they had nothing. All they had was their skin. So, what's ironic, going back to white nationalists, they envy the fact that Jews and black people have this sense of racial identity where white people don't. But the whites and blacks and Jews only have that identity because it was stolen from them. Whereas whites have an ethnic national identity because they were never, like, if you're white, you probably know what country in Europe your ancestors came from. Maybe your dad is like English and German, your mom is Polish and Scottish or something. And you have a sense of heritage and a sense of identity because of your European ancestry. And that's something that Jews and blacks don't have because, again, the blacks were enslaved and no one took records of where they came from. And the Jews didn't have a homeland for thousands of years. So anyway, so my point is when if you don't try to create a white ethno state, it's not going to work. But you can create a ethno state based on an ethnicity, i.e. Scottish, Italian, German, English, whatever. Like you can create like a little Britain where people of British ancestry can celebrate British culture and British heritage and British history, and they could eat fish and chips, and they can use the metric system and talk about jolly old England and drink tea. All right. But people from Greece or Italy probably don't want to be a part of that. They want to be a part of a different group that celebrates their culture and everything. The main problem with that is it's a numbers problem at that point. Like, how many white people of British descent are so proud of their British heritage they're willing to form a community around it? Probably not a million. So that's why, like, now you may be lucky. Maybe you could find enough people who really want to bring back, little Germantown. They want to have Oompa music and Oktoberfest and eat schnitzel and drink from beer steins and all that shit. Maybe you could pull that off if you have the numbers for it, but it's really a numbers game at that point. And then after that, it gets even worse, because now you're talking about, so if you don't have a family to build a community around, and you don't have a religion to build a community around, and you don't have an ethnicity to build a community around, all you have at that point are vague philosophical or political alignments, which have been proven to be not enough to form a community on. And I'll point you to the innumerable libertarian projects to try to create some type of libertarian state, whether it's the Republic of Minerva, or whether it's the seasteading plan, or whether it's everyone moved to New Hampshire, or everybody live on a fucking oil rig, or everyone live under the sea in Rapture. It never works. So, and it's a numbers game. And also, the other problem with libertarians is most libertarians are like captains of industry and independently wealthy business owners and whatnot. And, this is something they explored in the movie, and not the movie, in the game BioShock. So, Andrew Ryan, who's like supposed to be a stand-in for Ayn Rand and objectivism, he invited all these people who wanted to live in a libertarian society to Rapture. And the people who came were like the captains of industry and the leaders and the entrepreneurs, the people who wanted to run shit. But when an entire population is made up of essentially chiefs, and there aren't enough Indians, no one wants to be the Indian. Someone has to be the dumbest smart person, the ugliest model. Like, I use the analogy of the Cleveland Browns. They're a professional sports team. They would mop the shit out of like any high school team or any semi-pro team. But when you get into the pros, they're like the worst team. Someone has to come in last, even in the pros. But imagine you're used to being the smartest guy in the room. You're used to being the leader. You're used to being like the guy everyone looks to, and you're the guy who's going places, and you're the leader. And then you come to Rapture, and you find out that you're the dumbest smart person. And then everyone expects you to clean the toilets and follow orders. And that hit to your ego is going to cause you to resent and rebel. And that's what happened in the game BioShock. So that's why the libertarian idea doesn't really work. You have to have people from all walks of life. You can't have an entire society of libertarians. Libertarians tend to be the winners. You have to have people. You have to have poor people. You have to have middle class people. You have to have workers. You have to have managers. You can't have an entire society of CEOs and no workers and no managers. Everyone just can't be the CEO. And so that doesn't work. So I really think once you get past religion, if you cannot find a community based around religion or based around family or culture, like shared culture, you're kind of fucked. The idea of creating an ethno-state based on ethnic origin, I don't think you can get the numbers for that. If you can, great. If you can do that, awesome. But it's going to be very difficult for you to find people, like, I don't know, like, whatever, let's say, again, using like a little Germantown. So you and a bunch of other people of German descent decide to create a little Germantown to celebrate German heritage and German culture and German everything. But again, it's a numbers game. You're going to need thousands of people at least in order to basically do what you want. Unless you just want like a tourist trap where you can have Oompa music and sell Wiener Schnitzels. But if you wanted to actually have a no-go zone, you need to have the numbers to have a no-go zone. And I don't think that's very possible, at least in the United States. Now, in Germany, that might be really easy, but, that's the thing, though. Like, we're talking in America for the most part. But the idea of a white ethno-state makes no sense for the simple reason that everyone agrees multiculturalism is bad. You need to have a dominant monoculture in any society that people have to assimilate and conform to. So you have a white ethno-state. What language are you going to speak? What
It depends on the ethno state. It might be Swedish, it might be
well, no,
American, it might be
it's a white ethno state. All white people are welcome. But
yeah, okay.
how are you going to decide what's the official language? What's the official religion? What type of heritage and culture? You can't just say European. That's so broad and vague. Like, that doesn't work unless you're talking about some kind of like mini EU where you have micro states within the ethno state for all these different ethnicities. But at that point, like, remember how much you hate the EU? Why would you recreate the EU on a smaller scale and think that's going to work any better than the big EU that everyone hates? So that doesn't work. But I think if you have a religious identity, that could work. Or if you just basically stick with your family and your culture, that could work. But those are your best bets for creating a no-go zone from scratch if you're thinking about sticking it out in America. But it's going to be rough going. And honestly, the no-go zone idea is basically, so here's the goal. The longer goal is communism doesn't work. Just, I don't know if you knew that. It's been
I knew that.
It's been tried. It always fails. It always ends in starvation and gulags and whatnot. So if you can outlast the government, you can basically just wait for it to burn itself out, Sun Tzu style. Wait. See, right now, communism has the wind at their back, and so they're in the strong position. But as soon as they win, as soon as they spend everyone's money, communism has three phases. You have the honeymoon. So once communism takes over, what I mean by taking over is they have single party rule and elections are over and they're in charge in perpetuity. Once that happens, you have the honeymoon phase where the communists are seizing everyone's money. They're seizing the means of production. They're giving away the money. Everyone's happy. If you remember back in Venezuela, when Chavez first took power, he was basically just giving people money. And everybody loved it. Everyone thought it was great. Chavez was giving them all this free money. And he was nationalizing industries and he was seizing people's property and he was giving it to the people and they loved it. That's the honeymoon phase. And that lasts until you run out of other people's money. Once you've given away the last bit of other people's money, then you have to turn to the printing press. And then once you turn to the printing press, you cause inflation. And inflation affects food prices. And the people are like, oh no, food is too expensive. Government, make the food cheap again. And so the government will tell the farmers, okay, they'll put price controls on the food, saying, well, you can't sell this food for more than this. And the farmer will tell them, well, that's less than it costs to grow. So you're telling me to take a loss on food. So are you going to make up the difference? And they have no reason to say yes because they're the government. They'll say, no, you're going to sell it for that price. So one of two things will happen. Either the farmers refuse to sell food at all. They just stop growing food and everyone starves. Or they grow the food and try to smuggle it to make a profit. And this happened in Venezuela. This also happened in the Soviet Union. If you want to know what the Holodomor was about, basically there was hyperinflation from Stalin. And he went to the Czechoslovakian farmers saying, you're going to sell your food at this price. And the farmer said, no, that's not enough. And so he just took their food and left them to starve to death and eat their children. So either Venezuela happens where you have massive food shortages, or you enslave your farmers, which is what happened in the Soviet Union, or you starve them to death and make them eat their children. But that's how that ends. Now, once you've enslaved or killed the farmers, you have starvation. So here are the steps. You spend everyone else's money, then you start turning on the printing press, then you cause food shortages due to price controls, then you starve to death. Once you're at that stage of starving to death, that's when the people who've been biding their time can now rise up and be greeted as liberators as they finish off the corrupt government. Because now the question is, how are you going to get to that point? Because if you look at history, communists have a habit of liquidating their opposition. And this is why, in the grand scheme of things, I don't believe no-go zones are a viable solution if you're genuinely concerned about a communist revolution. So no-go zones are a great idea if you're just worried about like corrupt Democrats. But if you're worried about single-party communist rule, they will send the military after you, and you need serious numbers to resist the military. At that point, that's just the Civil War. And so you have to have weapons and be prepared to fight if you're going to go down that road. But if you're genuinely concerned about a communist revolution, you probably need to leave.
Yeah.
And there's no shame
Sure.
in that. In fact, Stalin himself was exiled, and he came back to Russia when the Tsar and the government after the Tsar was very weak, and he helped topple it. But he was living in exile. So think of it that way. So when the communists take over, leave, live anywhere else, and then when the communist government burns itself out, you can return as a liberator and then free your people, and then you'll be hailed as a hero. But if you stay, they're going to kill you, because that's what communists always do. That's why I don't get these accelerationists who want to like help the communists take power quicker, to try to get to that starvation collapse point quicker. They don't understand that they are going to kill you before then. Long before they starve to death, you'll be dead. Because if you look at any communist revolution, they always kill the right long before they starve to death. So what's your plan for that? How are you going to survive the purge? And even if you join them, if you look at Stalin, he killed obviously everyone on the right, and Mao did the same thing. They killed everyone on the right. Then they also started killing people on the left who weren't left enough, who were considered wishy-washy or not as loyal as their insider, loyalists. So even if you try to go along to get along and ghost in plain sight, they're going to round you up and kill you anyway, because you're not loyal enough to the cause. So if you're genuinely concerned about a communist revolution, you probably need to just leave the country until the communist government burns itself out. But if you're only concerned about like riots, corrupt mayors, democratic shenanigans, a no-go zone of a few thousand people should be enough. Look at Europe. What's happening in Europe doesn't have a communist dictator problem. There are no communist dictators in Europe. You have leftist progressive governments that are like, taking people's rights away and whatnot, but they're not going around liquidating the population and enslaving them. So no-go zone is perfectly fine against a progressive far left government, but it's not enough against a Stalinistic communistic dictatorship. So ultimately, while a no-go zone might be a solution, if things get really, really bad and really, really leftist, it may not be enough. So you may also, even if you have a no-go zone, you may want to also think about if things get really bad, and if this starts to go full Stalin, where are we going to go to basically live in exile until the government burns itself out? And you can always come back later. And look, land can be reconquered, cities can be rebuilt. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, what you can't do is reclaim your life after it's gone.
Right, and like I've used this analogy several times. If you look at the Roman Empire, the last great emperor, well, the last emperor of Rome before the end, who had any hint of greatness, was Emperor Majorian. And Majorian, he really tried to restore Rome to its former glory, and he instituted what are called the Majorian reforms. He tried to reform the corrupt Senate. He tried to increase the birth rates to create more Roman men. He tried to take women's rights away, but it was like too little too late. He eventually got deposed and tortured and killed. And after that, there was no hope for the empire. And then Rome was destroyed within like 2 or 3 generations, or like a decade or two. And then Rome was destroyed. And then there was only the Byzantine Empire in the East. The point is, though, one of Majorian's big failings was he was trying to hold the entire empire together. He was trying to reconquer the whole empire when the writing was on the wall that it was over. Essentially, after Attila the Hun, the Goths had poured into the empire, and they'd already created their own little kingdoms and conquered huge swaths of the empire. And the Romans were trying to like conquer them and make them what are called federati, where they were basically they were under the Roman Empire, but they were still like self-governing. They were like no-go zones essentially, but they'd always rebel, and they'd have to be reconquered, and then they'd have to submit again. They'd always rebel later. And really what Rome should have done is just pull their forces back and realize that like they're not going to listen. And here's what, and with his reforms of trying to raise the birth rates, had he not been assassinated and had his reforms been able to take hold for like a few decades or generations, he could have restored Rome to its former glory. But he had to do 2 things. He had to pull his forces out from the outskirts of the empire, pull them all back to Italy, because having his forces all spread out made them very easily to get wiped out, which is what happened. He had his forces all spread out to try to hold the whole empire together, and it was like divide and conquer. But then the other thing that happened was he was assassinated before his reforms could really raise the fertility rate. So what he should have done is just essentially the saying I like to say is let go of the empire and save Rome. You can't hold the empire's done. It's over. It hasn't collapsed yet, but the writing's on the wall and you can't stop it. So let the empire go, but save Rome. Pull everyone back to Italy and keep Rome alive. As long as Rome doesn't fall, as long as your people are there, then you could take women's rights away, get your fertility rate back up, and within a generation you'll have men again. You could slowly reconquer Italy. Then you basically have to reconquer the empire again. Instead of conquering this group of barbarians, you'll be conquering that group of barbarians. But you'll have to do it slowly. But that's the only choice you have. You don't have the people and you don't have the birth rate to hold this empire together anymore. So Majorian tried to hold the empire together. He tried to reform things, but it was too little too late. It all fell apart. And he was dead and the empire was destroyed. So my advice to people in the West is the American empire is basically unsustainable. The Western system has been horribly corrupted by feminism and gynocentrism. The birth rate is shit. You have communism everywhere. And so, there's not enough will to fix it. And by the time things do get like bad enough for the average normie dipshit to be on board with fixing it, it'll be too late.
I like that average normie dipshit.
Well, so you have to, what you have to do is you have to let go of the empire and you have to save Rome. And whatever Rome is, so again, Rome is your people. I'm using that as a metaphor. Whatever your people are, your culture, your society, your values, that's what Rome is. You need to preserve that because you can always rebuild. Like I'll use the Jews again as the positive example. So the Jews were driven out by the Emperor Hadrian. They lived in exile, mixing with different cultures, but they always maintained their culture and their heritage and their values. And then thousands of years later, they basically got their homeland back after World War II. That's unprecedented in human history. For a group to basically not only maintain their values and their culture for thousands of years without a homeland and then reconquer that land generations later, that's never happened before. It's unprecedented. But it's happened before. Now that it's happened before, it's not impossible. So no matter what happens, the important thing is as long as you preserve your culture and your people and your values and your beliefs and your whatever, as long as you preserve those, you can reconquer the land later. So, I talk to people who are like, no, this is my home. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to fight. And they're just going to throw their lives away. If there's no chance for victory, you're just throwing your life away. So don't do that. And in fact, I keep using Jews as examples. So I use this, I guess, because Halsey. I like to use Jews as examples for the sake of Halsey.
Halsey, yeah.
Anyway, so here's my. There are 4 different types of Jews in Germany. There were the Jews who left early. They sold their shit and they converted it and they moved overseas with most of their possessions and most of their wealth intact. And they're probably called cowards and traitors and quitters and whatever, but they sold their shit and got out of there. And they were actually very well off. They were able to keep a lot of their stuff and they just moved and lived somewhere else. And then there was a second group of Jews. These were the Jews who left during what is called the Night of Broken Glass, where there were anti-Semitic riots and people's businesses were being torched. And so people they just fled with a shirt on their back. And they walked away from everything, their homes, their businesses, their possessions. They just didn't want to die. So they were smuggled out of the country with nothing but the clothes on their back. And then they fled to America or whatnot with nothing. And then they had to rebuild from nothing. But they were alive. The third group of Jews were the Jews who died in the Warsaw Ghetto. And so here's the quick down and dirty of the Warsaw Ghetto. When the Jews started getting rounded up, they weren't immediately sent to the concentration camps. So they were sent to what are called ghettos. So they were like herded into these like really concentrated areas. And then eventually they get put on cattle cars and sent to the concentration camps. But in the Warsaw Ghetto in Warsaw, Germany, the Jews realized what was happening. They realized they were going to die. And so they decided they'd rather die on their feet. So they rebelled and they started a big old riot. They were all killed. They did some damage, but they didn't. It meant nothing. It was basically a Pyrrhic victory, not even a Pyrrhic victory. They accomplished nothing other than dying. I mean, you could say, well, they died as men. They died on their feet, and they resisted. That's all you can say. They accomplished nothing. They didn't hurt the German war machine. They didn't win any battles. They just rebelled when it was well past the point of too late, and they accomplished nothing, and they all died. But at least they died as men. And then you have the fourth group of Jews who just are the ones who got on the cattle cars, went to the concentration camps, were put into ovens. So those are the four groups of Jews. Which ones do you want to be? And unfortunately, what I see a lot of people who want to be the Warsaw Ghetto Jews.
Yeah.
They don't want to leave, and their plan is to die in glorious melee combat in a pointless battle where they accomplish nothing other than dying on their feet. But it's like, you're not just killing yourself, you're also taking away a life that could be used to fight in the future for the reclamation. You know, imagine if all those Jews who died in the Warsaw Ghetto had left with the first and second group of Jews. There would have been thousands of more people to help establish these communities. And then generations later, like all these families were completely wiped out in the Holocaust. That didn't have to happen, but they didn't leave. So they just, they died on their feet. And it's like, that's, if it comes to that, that's better than, like, I'd rather die on my feet in the ghetto than get put into an oven, but I'd much rather live and not die at all. So
I'd rather sell off myself and be the first group.
Right. So
and bounce.
Yeah. Just so think about what your options are, and don't just be like, oh, I'm going to do the manly thing and I'm going to die in glorious melee combat. It's like,
never fight a small skirmish when you can win a bit major war.
Well, no. So the Jews had nothing to do with defeating Nazi Germany.
Like, well, I know I'm talking about never stick around and fight some small skirmish that's meaningless when you can actually die. You have a higher chance of dying. Instead, like, leave, regroup with a bigger group, wait it out, and then come back with the army basically that you need to basically take it back. Yeah, after everything collapses and stuff like that.
Or what you do, like, again, so the after World War II, the Jews who had like fled to America negotiated for being given Jerusalem, their homeland back. They lost all the way back in the Roman times, since the Ottoman Empire was allies with Hitler, and they also lost the war. You know, the right of the victors was to break up the land of the defeated. And so they're like, oh, fucking the Ottomans lost and the Nazis lost. We're going to fucking give your land to the Jews. And what are you going to do about it? Like, you lost the fucking war. Go fuck yourself. That's so like but anyway, my point is that you can't think and you can't act if you're dead. So not dying is priority number one. No-go zones are a good option in the short term, but I'm very concerned that in the long term that, if America goes full communist, then a no-go zone isn't going to be enough. So we should also think about, now, maybe down the road, maybe when it comes to that, maybe there'll be a place to go. Or maybe we'll have a civil war. Honestly, at that point, a civil war would be preferable. Again, I'd much rather have a civil war than just a slowly boiling frog, more and more tyranny every year, and no one does anything. That's the worst possible scenario. So we'll see. I don't know. It is what it is. But that's about all I have to say about no-go zones. Is there like another question?
Psyche Soap wanted me to ask you a question about the dolls. He basically wanted me to ask you what company is the better one.
Well, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with too many companies. Occasionally, well, this doesn't happen anymore. Back when my channel was like not shadow banned, I used to do things like waifu workshops, and I do like videos that were doll related. And so Phil would occasionally send me dolls that were in stock. Like, these were usually returns or canceled orders, to do pictures and videos and stuff like that. So I've handled silicone dolls and platinum TPE dolls, but I've never used them in air quotes because I'm a one waifu for life guy.
Gotcha.
But in my experience, I prefer the feel of regular TPE. There's pros and cons. So silicone is very expensive, and especially like a TPE doll is going to run you about $2,000 to $2,500. And a low grade silicone doll is going to cost you like $3,000 to $4,000. So it's more expensive just right off the gate. And the lower tier silicone dolls are very firm. Now, what they can do is they can make the breasts hollow and fill them with a gel to make the breasts more jiggly. But without that, the breasts are very firm. Silicone is a very firm material, very hard. Now, it does hold detail a lot better than TPE, but it also feels very stiff and plastic-like. So I'm not a fan as far as the feeling goes. The problem with platinum TPE is it's too soft. So it's like, but regular TPE has its own disadvantages. It gets very sticky, and so you have to powder it and you have to like rub oil on it, and it's always a give and take. So there is no better material. It's what are you willing to compromise with? So silicone is the least maintenance, but it's also the most expensive. Now you can get really high end silicone dolls that are just as soft as TPE that use like a silicone mesh, like a silicone foam inside the doll to make it soft like TPE. But you're talking like $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. So you're really paying for that increase in quality. But if you want the best of the best, there you go. As far as the feeling goes, the best way to know what material is right for you, this seems kind of obvious when you think about it, but you'd be surprised. Buy an insert in silicone and TPE. So you can get a TPE and a silicone insert, which are basically the dolls sometimes have removable vaginas. So they have a cavity. You can put the insert in, and then you can take it out. It makes it a lot easier to clean than trying to like fish or come out with like a bottle or something. So you can buy these removable vagina inserts in both materials, and you can use them like a pocket pussy, and then you can actually feel what the material is instead of going by how I'm describing it. Buy the inserts and then use them. And the best part is you could still use them as a pocket pussy even if you don't like them. So if you decide to go with a silicone doll, you still have that TP insert you can use as a pocket pussy, or vice versa.
Gotcha.
So that's how you do the materials. As far as brands, it's more a matter of you get what you pay for. So the cheaper brands tend to be cheaper, and the more expensive brands tend to be more expensive. I know the Dollhouse they have very razor thin profit margins. So if you see a doll that's more expensive, it's not because the Dollhouse is like taking some kind of huge cut. It's just that those dolls are more expensive. And generally, if the doll is more expensive, it's because it has more quality. It's usually silicone, or it has like implanted hair or some type of realistic features that makes it more expensive.
Gotcha. Let's see. There was one other question I wanted to ask you, but I forgot what that was. Good Lord. Let's see. Other topics. Well, we already covered like the election and stuff like that. That was going to be one of the many topics, but you already covered it in the beginning when you were trying to explain, when you were setting up for the
it's all related. It's all related. So,
as always.
It's I don't understand, like people are like, oh, well, you shouldn't talk about politics. You talk about like MGTOW stuff. It's like, but MGTOW stuff is related to politics. Like feminism is related to communism. Like, have you heard about critical theory?
Yeah.
Like, who the fuck you think funded all these feminist movements in the 60s? It was the Soviet Union. So it's like you can't really talk about feminism without talking about leftism, Marxism, the value of equality. It's all related.
Yeah. And the sad part about that, everybody, it's kind of like when I always deal with certain people and they always talk about, well, Tika, I don't understand what the price in tea in China got to do with me. It has everything to do with you. The price in tea in China has everything to do with you. That's your problem. You're thinking too small. You're not thinking on a major scale. And the sad part about that, when it comes down and it affects you, do you want to act shocked? Like, I can't believe this is happening. Oh no.
Well,
it's like,
so
duh.
Actually, so we're going to talk about my book that I just wrote. And so,
oh yeah, that's what it was. That's what the topic was.
All right.
Yeah.
So actually, let me tell you why I wrote this book and how so this book is more or less, it's like written in the style of a classical Taoist text.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, if you've been following me recently, I suddenly started talking about Taoism and religion, and I'm basically an atheist. So why did I do this? So let me explain why. And again, this shows you how everything is related. So this all started years ago when I understood that the system was broken and treated men unfairly and benefited women at the expense of men, while claiming to be for equality. Like, I mean, look at the family court, look at feminism. The society says it's all about equality while it props women up and cuts men down.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. So, the first thing you do is you're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Maybe the people must not know. So you go down the MRA route, assuming that people just lack information. If you tell them true information, that they're going to realize, oh, wait, we're not living according to our values. We should be espousing equality. Therefore, let's reform the laws and make them equal. But then, of course, that doesn't happen. You tell people, well, actually, the wage gap is bullshit, and here are the facts and the figures, and it's all true. Then they just re at you and say that you hate women.
Yeah.
So then you have to ask yourself, well, why? So the problem starts with your cognizant understanding of the system that is broken, known as feminism. Then that leads you to questioning, why can't we do anything about it? And then you realize, well, it's because women vote. And they're the majority of voters because they outlive men. They don't die in war. They're the majority of retirees. So women can simply outvote men and vote themselves men's money and all these benefits. So politicians will never reform these laws because women vote. Well, so now, but then you understand, well, men are the vast majority of the police and military. Men are like 80, even with lower standards, men are still 85% of the police and military. In other countries where they don't have lower standards for women, it's like 95%. But in America, it's 85%. That's still horrendously overbalanced. Yeah. So if men just woke up tomorrow and decided to take women's rights away, there isn't a goddamn thing women could do about it. And once we took women's rights away, we could fix the system. So I tried to make that case. And if you follow my content, you've known that I tried to make the honest case that women should have their rights taken away for essentially the longevity of society, that this empowerment of women was dooming society. And I still stand by that. I'm 100% right. And you see all these articles talking about the low birth rates and the end of society and demographic collapse. It's because of women's empowerment. They don't want to talk about it. Like, everyone knows it's true, or maybe there's some denial. I don't know.
Well, but no, they just dance around it because they know it's the problem, but they don't want to.
So
they basically are pandering to a certain group of people. So it's like, if I slap my base in the face, they're not going to want to listen to me no more, and I'm going to be destroyed or canceled, basically.
Well, so then the question is, I'll come to that. So I reached out to everyone on the right. I talked to people on the alt-right. I talked to traditional conservatives. I talked to religious conservatives. I tried to tell them we need to take women's rights away. I naively thought that we could all come together because this is literally the answer. So, for example, if you're an alt-right guy, or you're a reactionary, and you want to, what are the problems? You see the West is dying because of modernity, but really it's female empowerment and welfarism. So let's get rid of that. What's the problem? And nobody, literally no group on the right, I'm talking religious conservatives, the alt-right, the reactionaries, not one single group on the right is on board with taking women's rights away. Not one. And so then I had to ask why. Again, going back, so I have a problem. The solution to the problem is impossible, and I have
somebody low key will probably tell you those are the people that's really in power right now.
No, it's more fundamental than that. So, you start with feminism. We can't solve it. Why? Because women vote. Well, let's take women's voting rights away. We can't solve it. Why? The reason why we can't solve the women's voting rights issue is because of religious principles. So mostly idealism and Kantian philosophy and just Christian herd morality. That's where this push of equality comes from. It comes from Christianity's herd morality. It comes from Kantian philosophy and the categorical imperative. And this is basically a Western, it comes from the German idealistic school. So during the Enlightenment, there were two different schools of philosophy. There's German idealism and there was British realism. The original feels versus reals. And feels won. From German idealism, you got communism, feminism, Kant. Like, it's all the same. Now, when you get to these philosophies, the reason why they were adopted was because of Christianity. And so the next stage of this journey about why can't we solve these problems comes down to the fact that Christianity espouses certain values which are antithetical to a free society. Christianity is basically great if you want to live in a monarchy. If you want to live in feudalism, Christianity is great. But if you want to live in a republic with freedom and individualism, Christianity does not teach values that are simpatical with that. And the founding fathers knew this. That's why they wanted to separate church and state. But then progressive Christians swept God under the carpet and took over the government. So it is what it is. But here's the thing. So I asked myself, well, what can we do to solve this problem? And so the only thing I could come up with was we can't just say no religion at all, because people, they want to, they have questions like what happens after we die? What's the meaning of life? Where do we come from? If you don't give them an answer, they're going to find someone to give them an answer. And that someone who gives them an answer may be promoting values that you don't like. So you might as well get ahead of the problem and find a religion which teaches the values that you want taught in your society that are compatible with the values of your society. And clearly Christianity and, Western republicanism and freedom is not simpatico with each other. Jesus did not teach free markets. And I know like modern Christians like to just rationalize. They're wrong. I can prove it. The early not the founders, like the founding fathers, they were deists. But a lot of the early settlers in America were fleeing religious persecution, like the Pilgrims. They all practiced communal property because that's what the Bible teaches.
Yeah.
And they had what's called the starving time because communal property doesn't work. But that's what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches communal property. You can deny it, but you're wrong. And so these religious groups, they read the Bible, they want to emulate what they read in the Bible, and they create communism. And if you look up the German idealistic philosophers, they cite the Bible as the basis of why they believe in this sort of thing. So, the founding fathers did the best they could trying to separate church and state, but it clearly didn't work, as progressivism has shown. So what we actually need is a religion that promotes the values that we want in society. So if you believe in freedom and individualism, you need a religion that teaches freedom and individualism. So that began my journey to find a religion that teaches freedom and individualism. And I originally wanted to see like if anyone tried to form some type of not like you can't just replace a religion with a philosophy. It has to have some type of theology behind it. So that led me to a philosopher named Baruch Spinoza. And Spinoza tried to basically recreate Western religion as more of a pantheistic type of thing. The problem with Spinoza was because he rejected all the traditions and all the rituals of the church. There wasn't really a religion there. There was like a belief in like a higher power, but it wasn't really a religion per se. And so there was no following, there was no impact, there was no religion built around Spinoza's metaphysics, which is unfortunate because it kind of did solve the problem, but it just didn't work. So then I found Taoism, which espouses a very similar concept as Spinoza's pantheism, which is the Tao. And unlike Spinoza, Taoism is a thousands-year-old religion that has all kinds of rituals and goofy stuff that people can latch onto. So with Taoism, you actually have a real religion with millions of practitioners, with a rich thousands-long year history, with rituals and days and all kinds of stuff. So you actually have a real religion that works in reality. And if you read the Tao Te Ching and you read other Taoist texts, they promote a very pro-libertarian, leave people alone, just being, don't get involved with people's lives, leave them alone type of thing. A live and let live kind of, not saying it espouses libertarian politics, but just like Jesus didn't preach monarchy. Like, hey, everyone needs to have a government ruled by a king and the divine right of kings. That just flowed from the model in the Bible, which is, Jesus is the King of Kings and Lords of Lords, and God is an almighty king. And so when you mirror that in reality, you get monarchy. And the religion or the government kind of espousing the Tao Te Ching and the Zhuangzi is more of a libertarian government. It's just not, it doesn't talk about government directly, but that's just the values that flow from Taoism. And so that's what led me to Taoism originally. And so it's really good. I mean, I don't believe in the religion part, but there's actually chapters in the Tao Te Ching which almost like prophetically talk about people why people need religion. People need the rituals. People need the goofy stuff because essentially like they're weak, and that's okay. Like even if a religion has goofy stuff built on top of it, as long as the bones are good, it's all good. So if you look at Christian, use Christianity as an example. So the Romans did a good job of reforming Christianity under Constantine. Christianity started out as like a bunch of pyromaniacs, but they eventually were reformed by Constantine, and they did a pretty good job throughout the Middle Ages. They could have done better, but such is life. But then once people could read the Bible, once they got the Bible in their hands, they realized a lot of stuff that the church was doing wasn't in the Bible. It was essentially a Roman edition. And so the Protestant Reformation happened where they unreformed the religion. They went back to the Bible. They cut out all the Roman stuff. Well, it was the Roman stuff that made the religion work, because then what you had after the Protestant Reformation is you had like groups like the Pilgrims practicing communal property, and you had which eventually led to progressivism. So the Romans actually were right but their reforms were not in the Bible. They were additions. You're essentially taking a bad religion and trying to make it good. But then when people go back to the book, they'll see the values that are being espoused in the book, and they'll always undo your reforms. You see this especially in Islam, where you had the Shah of Iran, who was trying to turn Iran into a Western kind of more modern state. And eventually he got overthrown by the mullahs, who dragged the country kicking and screaming back to the Dark Ages, because Islam is a Dark Age religion. Yeah. And that's what the book teaches. So when you try to create a modern Islamic state, the fundamentalists will always bristle at that and try to drag you back to the Dark Ages, because that's what the book is. So you can reform a bad religion, but you'll always run the risk of having your reforms undone by fundamentalists who want to go back to the book because they actually believe it. So it's much better to have a religion where the foundation is good, and if there's a bunch of goofy shit built on top of it that isn't true, that's okay. Because as long as the foundation is good, as long as it teaches the right values, like in Taoism, there's a lot of like Chinese folk magic and folk religion built into it. Essentially what happened was you had like philosophers like Zhuangzi and Lao Tzu, who wrote books that really weren't really religious books at all. They were just philosophical books. And then like hundreds of years later, a guy claimed to see Lao Tzu in a vision from heaven, kind of like Joseph Smith, how he created like DLC to the Bible when he created Mormonism. So that's basically what this guy did. He had Lao Tzu appeared to him, and he created the religion of Taoism. And he basically like it's just basically was Chinese folk religion mixed in with the teachings of Lao Tzu and Chuang-Tzu, but it's a lot of like magic and alchemy and stuff like that. Now then Buddhism came in, and then a lot of Taoists copied a lot of Buddhist practices. And so then there was a lot of like exchange between Buddhism and Taoism. And then when the Mongols conquered China, they decided that Buddhism was right. So a lot of Taoists started overtly copying Buddhism in order to curry favor with the Mongols. So there's a very rich history to the religion of Taoism. The point is that between the Chinese folk religion, between the CCP's persecution, and between like a lot of other goofy stuff that was added over thousands of years, it's become kind of like a mess. But at the foundation of it, it's good. Because if you read the Tao Te Ching and the Zhuangzi, it's good. It has good messages. There's good lessons. There's good values being taught. And if the goofy shit that's been built onto it isn't for you, you could straight up just ignore it. It doesn't matter. Just like you have people who are nominally Christian, who they don't really go to church or anything. That's not important to them, but they still believe in Jesus or something like that. You're still a Christian, even if you don't go to church. Like you don't have to belong to some organized religion. Everyone acknowledges that. So it's that kind of concept. The point is you have to have you're going to have a religion in your society. So have a religion that teaches the values that you want taught in your society, values that are compatible, I keep saying simpatico, but compatible with the society you want to promote. So I found Taoism was a really good pro individualist type of religious movement. And what's ironic is even in ancient China, they had a political trichotomy. So the three major factions were the Confucianists, the Moists, and then the Taoists. And the Moists were like communists. They believed in universal love and they believed in utilitarianism, which is very communistic. They're actually, if you look into Moism, it's very communistic. And this is thousands of years ago, before communism even existed. And then you have Confucianism, which is very absolutist. So if you look at, you know, it just shows you how the more things change, the more things stay the same. Even in ancient China, you had the political trichotomy between tradition. So absolutism believes in like tradition and stability. That's what Confucianists were all about. Moists believe in equality, which is what Moists were all about. And the Taoists believed in freedom. They believed in freedom, and they believed in leaving people alone and just not trying to interfere with nature. So yeah, that's that one. That was like over 2,000 years ago. I think it was like 600 BC was during the 100 schools period in ancient China when all these philosophies were being tinkered with. So we're talking over, I don't know, 2,600 years ago. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So,
I actually like Halsey. B. I actually like Halsey. He's a nice balance sometimes.
well, yeah. So I mean, I like I like having someone who has a different perspective. I mean, obviously, me and Halsey agree on a lot of things, but we also have different perspectives, so we can offer a different perspective on something and maybe enrich each other's, you know, beliefs. So he comes at things with a different angle than me, and that's a good thing. I don't like if all, you know, I'm glad to have anyone contribute, but sometimes like if all you're going to do is like you believe exactly what I believe, then you're not really adding anything to the conversation, because I'll say something, you'll say, oh yeah, you said it just as well as I could have. I was going to say the same thing. Well, then, okay. There's really nothing to talk about then, because we're completely on the same page, which is good. It's valuable to have someone who's completely on the same page with you. It's just not very useful in terms of having a dialogue when everybody agrees with you. So
you kind of sort of need that dynamic.
Yeah, you don't want someone who's like completely oppositional to you, who's going to challenge every little thing you do, but you want someone who has like a different perspective that can like maybe kind of help sharpen your beliefs by giving you a different take on it, which is good. Anyway, so my book is called the Way of Monkey Book. Now, originally, it started out. So me and Halsey were writing a book together. It was going to be a book about politics and no-go zones, and there's going to be a very small chapter about philosophy. I was going to talk about values, and like the philosophy behind why values are important. And that section took on a life of its own. And then I realized that this values philosophy section was probably better off as its own book. So I was originally going to write a kind of a more of a traditional philosophy book, and I was going to call it Values in Society. And I was writing it. I think I got about like a chapter or two into it, and I realized I was really bored. I was not having fun writing this book. And so I was reading, this happened right around the time I really got into Taoism, and I was reading the Tao Te Ching, and I was like, why don't I write this book in the style of the Tao Te Ching? So that's why, if you're wondering why the Way of Monkey book is written the way it's written, it's because I just was bored writing it as a traditional philosophy book. So I decided to write it in the same style as a classical Taoist text. So it's written in a very allegorical style. It's got lots of beautiful art. I got Lisa Wynn to do the art for it. She did the art for 13 Rules to Not Be a Fucking Cuck. So it's done, and all the art in the book is done in mandrel style. It's a mandrel, or I think it's mandrel. So it's all circular. So it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful art. So anyway, the book is out. It's been out for about a week. So yeah, just check it out. It's on Amazon. It's called The Way of Monkey Book.
I'm gonna definitely check it out. That's one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because I was telling you behind the scenes, somebody wanted me to write one. Well, several people wanted me to write a book. I wanted to write a biography about me, which has probably been boring, but that was going to be like a small thing. But I wanted to write something almost like a philosophy, or a philosophy, or something that's written in a way of a story, like characters in a story who basically tells who tells a story, almost like a philosophy while progressing the story in a process, almost like a growing, like a story of growth, basically a coming of
Okay.
age type story. And I wanted to ask for your opinion on that. How would I go about doing that and still make it still people still want to stick to it, or people want to read it, basically?
Well, I mean, yeah, I can't. There's no secret to being a good writer. Like, you should know if you're a good writer or not.
Hmm.
I can help you. So I just self-publish on Amazon. There's a
Okay.
program called KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing. It's a giant pain in the ass because their software, you basically upload a Word document and you have to make sure that it injects into software correctly. So what I recommend doing is, before you start writing your book too much, make sure that you look up what the sizes of the book will be in the end, because you have to publish your book in certain dimensions, and then
Gotcha.
go into your word processor and set the actual page layout to those dimensions. So if you want to do stuff like headers and footers and any kind of stylized fonts, make sure that you start with the document put in the dimensions you're eventually going to publish in, because otherwise you're going to have to basically reformat the book. Like, if you write the book in 8.5 by 11, and then when you go to publish, you want to publish the book in 5 by 7,
Hmm.
that's not going to work.
Yeah.
You're going to have to basically go into the Word document. You have to re-edit everything until it looks good when you upload it. And you may find that, like, things don't line up correctly. You're going to have to make some changes in the document. You're going to have to you're going to have to really know how to use a word processor. You're going to have to know how to affect the spacing between paragraphs, how to affect the indent. Like, you need to know how to tweak those settings to make sure that it will display correctly in the Amazon software. And
Yeah.
that's going to take you hours of tweaking and re-uploading, and then going through and checking, and then tweaking it and re-uploading it, and going over it over and over again until you eventually get the book to look right when you upload it. Now,
Gotcha.
the benefit for that is, because with Kindles, with e-readers, you can change the font size. So that's why they do it that way, because unlike a regular book, you could change the font size in an e-reader. So they can't just do a picture of a page. It has to be dynamic, so they can change the font size based on the user's input, which is fine. I'm just letting you know, like, that's why it is the way it is.
Gotcha.
So publishing, if you know what you're doing, you should be able to get the draft copy submitted in a day once you're
Yeah.
finished done writing the book. Here's a pro tip that I've used. This is a really good pro tip. When you're reading a book, when you're proofreading a book, your brain will sometimes miss spelling and grammar errors because your brain will compensate. You know what you mean. And so even if letters are flipped, you won't see it because your brain is compensating dynamically for it.
Gotcha.
So the way to detect those spelling errors and grammar errors is have a text-to-speech engine read the document to you.
Hmm.
And listen, because the text-to-speech engine will read it exactly as it's written. So if there's a spelling error or a grammar error, you'll be able to hear it in the text-to-speech engine. And then you'll be able to pause it, find out where it's reading it from, and then fix it. I've detected a lot of otherwise, like, other things that you may notice is, like, when you're writing a paragraph, you may switch between first and third person, and you may not even realize it. And then when you're having it read back to you, you'll notice that the voice goes from first to third person. It sounds weird.
Yeah.
And so a huge tip for writing a book is, when you're proofreading, have a text-to-speech engine read the document back to you, and you'll be able to detect the spelling errors and the grammar errors and the tense errors and these little minor errors that you probably wouldn't notice by reading it physically, because your brain would dynamically compensate for the things and you wouldn't even notice them. But
Gotcha.
being a good writer it's like a skill. So I don't have any tips. The best tip to being a good writer is to be a good reader.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
know I can do I know I can do poetry and short stories. I never really did like a whole entire book. Like, I write my daughters like poetry every morning. I write my children poetry every morning and put it on their pillow before they go to school and wake up.
okay.
So I'm
Well,
pretty good with that as far
we'll
as that's concerned.
here's what you should do. Find out the genre you want to write in and read books in that genre until you find an author that you like. And then just, don't just read it to be entertained.
Hmm.
Think about the writing style. And, that's not patentable or trademarkable. You could
Yeah.
write a book in the same style as another author. And it's like a cover band. Yeah. Like you sound like this other band, but you're making your own original music. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. So if you want to write like fantasy novels and you want to read like Lord of the Rings or George R. R. Martin or the Witcher series, and you want to base your fantasy novels on that, nothing wrong with that. Gotcha. In fact, you might be very inspired by that. So the secret to being a good writer is being a good reader, and then understanding the structure that you're reading and what you like and don't like about it, and then start doing it. But you don't just plagiarize people's books either.
Oh no, I'm not.
Be original, but copy you can copy ideas or
style or delivery.
Yeah, the style, the tone, the format. Like let's say you like Game of Thrones. You like that Game of Thrones series. And so you want to do a really big, instead of having one central character, you want to have this whole like cast of characters. You're constantly bouncing back, telling this huge story with all these different perspectives. And you were inspired by Game of Thrones to write the story in that way. There's nothing wrong with that. And then you could write this huge story. And the best part about that format is you can kill off main characters and it doesn't end the story. Like if you had one main character and the main character, basically, if your main character dies, it's the end of the series. And so they have plot armor.
Yeah.
But if you're writing a Game of Thrones style book and you have all these different characters and you're telling a larger story, you could kill off half your main characters and the story can continue.
True.
Because you have other characters. So that actually makes the story a lot more engaging because nobody's safe. Nobody has plot armor.
Yeah. True.
So different ways. So, be a good reader. That'll make you a good writer. And then as far as publishing the book, it's all about, formatting and proofreading. Now, when it comes to art, basically don't skimp on the art. Giving good, like if it's just going to be a textbook, like no pictures in the book, perfectly fine. But get a good artist to do a good cover. And like when I hired Lisa Wynn, I paid her. Now, she might have cut me a deal. Sometimes I get artists who are willing to cut me a deal because they like my content. But Lisa, she did the art. It was $125 per piece, and I ordered 10 pieces, and then the cover was $150. So it's like almost $2,000, give or take, for all the art for the book. Now, that's a lot, $2,000 in art assets for one book. But maybe start small, do like a cover, and then have without any art inside. But you want a good cover.
Yeah, definitely.
So what I recommend doing is, you can go to places like Fiverr or contact any artists if you belong to a community. See if an artist will work with you. But honestly, don't pay them by the hour or anything. It's basically payable upon delivery.
Yeah.
And but make sure you pay them promptly. So when I hire artists, I pay them well and I pay them promptly, but I also expect professionalism. And that's all you got to do. And so, and like when I was first starting out, like I did, like if you read The Doll on My Balls, it's all photography. So I do all the art for the Doll on My Balls series. So I didn't have to pay an artist. But then other art, when it's other genres, like with a Sweet Corn and Ass, it's like a Dr. Seuss parody. So I paid an artist to do Dr. Seuss like art for that book. So so that's the thing. But if you're not, unless you're an artist yourself, make sure you pay an artist to do good work. And that's about it.
Yeah. Because I typically, don't laugh at me, I typically write almost, unless it's like poetry, I typically write in a Edgar Allan Poe stylistic type way. So that's typically my style when I write. So it's like that pace and that cadence and that pace. Because that's typically one of the authors who I tend to mimic in the writing style and the delivery and the cadence and stuff like that. But I'm trying to change that so I can so it could be somewhat more upbeat for this book, basically. Unless it's going to be my biography, then it's going to pretty much be almost in that cadence.
So Edgar Allan Poe was more of a macabre poet and author. So if you're doing like science, what kind of genre are you looking at?
When I write this story, it's probably going to be like it's going to be done in a philosophy stylistic, artsy philosophy type thing. So the pictures will be there in the story. All
right, so that is not Poe.
Yeah, that's not potent. It's not going to be potent. That's the problem I'm going to have with it. I got to look at
Right.
somebody else to do so.
So here's maybe you should. This is gonna sound weird, but check out like C.S. Lewis, because C.S. Lewis, he was a Christian philosopher, and
Okay.
he wrote the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which
Okay.
are basically thinly veiled allegories told in the story of a fiction book
Okay.
to promote Christian philosophy. So even though I don't agree with his philosophy, I don't agree with Christianity, I can appreciate him being able to weave his philosophy into an entertaining fiction book, with magic and fighting and stuff like that, like a little mini Lord of the Rings.
Definitely.
So, again, so the key is be a good reader. And so find whatever genre or whatever story you're trying to tell, find an author that's told a similar story and
Gotcha.
see what. Now, obviously, you want one that's successful. That's why
Yeah.
you want to go with like someone successful. But once you found an author that is kind of telling a similar story, think about what made their story successful and what you can do to incorporate, like, so, C.S. Lewis used Christian philosophy to write The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. If you want to do something more existential, maybe you could check out Thus Spoke Zarathustra from Nietzsche, because he's an existentialist writer. He wrote Thus Spoke Zarathustra is kind of similar to my book. So Nietzsche wrote Thus Spoke Zarathustra he wrote it in a similar vein to the King James Bible,
Yeah.
like it was a lost book of the Bible. Whereas, and I wrote the Book of Monkey, the Way of Monkey book, to as like a classical Taoist text. So
Gotcha.
something like that might be interesting.
Okay, I'm gonna definitely check that out. And Kendall Rican want me to ask you: have you read the Chronicles of the Future?
No, what is that?
He basically just wanted to ask. I guess it's a book. I haven't really heard of it until he mentioned it, and I'm actually looking at it now on the internet as we're speaking.
Who wrote it?
Hang on, let me go back to it. It was written by Paul Amadis. Let me just pull it up because I can't pronounce his name. I'm gonna just pull it up on the share screen.
Okay.
Here we go. Right here.
Well, I've never heard of them, so whatever.
I'm gonna definitely check that book out. Kindle Rican.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check it out to see what it's all about. Anybody else have any questions in here before I bounce? Looks like DOA. No, nobody looks like they have anything.
Such is life.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I pretty much asked you, Mac. I'll just check out some of those other artists that you get. I mean, some of those other authors that you gave me to basically go from there. Definitely.
Well, I mean, realistically, if you're a fan of a genre, you should have authors you like.
I do, but for this book, it's going to be a bit different for what I'm used to writing. So it's one of those things where it's like,
well, so why don't you hold off on the writing and read some books in the genre you thinking about writing, and see if you like. When I used to make content before the dark times, my standard was, is this the type of video I would watch? Is this entertaining by my standards? So if you don't enjoy the genre yourself, if you don't like reading books in that genre, you probably shouldn't be writing a book in that genre.
Well, I do enjoy books in certain genres, but I was trying to make it more. What's the best way? I was trying to make it like almost like philosophy, but I was trying to weave it into an actual, almost like a
Yeah, no, I get it. My point is
an upbeat, almost like an upbeaty type.
All right, but I get that. Here's the thing, though. If you don't like reading those types of books, like, that's not your cup of tea. If you like reading different genres of books, don't try to force yourself to do something. It's like if you're a hip hop artist, and you make hip hop albums, don't try to cut a country music album.
Gotcha.
Stick to the genres you like doing, because that's what you're good at. So if you don't like writing these, if you're not into reading these philosophy type books, don't try writing them. Like, find a genre that you enjoy reading and then write a book in that genre, because that's clearly what you enjoy. And then you'll be the best judge if this is a fun, engaging story, or if it's not, what's wrong with it, because you're a fan of the genre. But don't force yourself into writing in genres you're not comfortable with or don't enjoy yourself. Because it's like, you ever see someone, doing a job that they're only there for the money and they really don't like doing it, versus someone who's enjoying it because they enjoy the work.
Definitely.
So yeah, you should be, whatever you do, you should be doing something because you enjoy it. Don't ever do anything for the money. If you got to suck a dick for $20, you fucking.
Oh, definitely not doing that. I'm gonna have to take that $20 hit right there. Like, I'm not
mind the balls. I'm just saying, like, if you're gonna do something, you might as well go
like
for
it, enjoy it. Yeah, enjoy it and do it to the best.
Make the most of it. Make an evening out of it.
Definitely, I agree with you 100%. But I do enjoy philosophy, but I was trying to change it up a bit so it could be almost like a coming of age, or a growing into your own person type thing. So, like, the philosophy was going to progress with the character as he gets older, or as he becomes wiser, or he or she becomes wiser, whatever I decide to make it. The character, he or she, basically, is basically going to be one of those things as it progresses on, as this person becomes smarter, wiser, and learns the world, and it's basically going to be through that person's eyes.
That reminds me of, do you like anime?
Yeah. We talked about that before. That matter of fact, I actually do. I do that.
Have you checked out Berserk?
What?
Berserk.
I think I heard of that. I haven't checked it out yet, but it's in my list of things to check out.
Yeah, what you're saying sounds a lot. So Berserk it's a character study in the main character, and the series changes genres several times as he goes through different transformations, and it's really just a story of this guy, like, because think about your life. Your life goes through changes. The tone of your life changes. If your life was a movie or a book series, the genre would change based on the period you are. So rather than, you ever watch a TV show like a sitcom where the characters never change? Every season is like the last. It's kind of boring. Berserk is the opposite. Every season, there's a huge change. Like, Guts, he's the main character. He changes the character. The world changes around him. It effectively becomes a different show. But it's always this character living and growing in this world. So that's definitely something you should check out if you haven't. Now, if you
I'm guessing this is it right here that I just got up on the screen.
I'm not even watching the screen, to be honest.
I'm sorry. It's okay.
But the actual series, the anime series, is kind of shit. Except the one in the 90s is pretty good, but the CGI ones from the couple years ago are dog shit.
Gotcha.
But if you get the manga, that's good. But yeah, so check out Berserk. You might be inspired by that.
I'm gonna check that out definitely. And that's about it. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. If you got anything that you want to add,
that's it. Thanks everybody for hanging out.
Thank y'all for hanging out, most definitely, and it's always a pleasure having you, TFM. As always, want to do your outro?
See you next time.
Definitely. Y'all be blessed and be good to yourselves and treat yourselves like milk and do nothing but spoil yourselves and always be a better version of yourself. And always be willing to listen to the opposite side, because they might have a nugget for you to learn that you can make your argument better, or make it so you can actually be a better person and be better prepared for an argument.
Fuck that.
Go ahead.
Fuck that shit.
What do you want to say to that?
No, that's on a. I disagree.
Okay, gotcha. All right, that's cool. I respect that. Right. But y'all be blessed and have a good one, and just take care of yourselves and treat yourselves like milk and don't spoil yourselves. All right, y'all. It's been a pleasure serving the community, the MGTOW Red Pill community. Y'all be blessed and have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.